There is a story of us that has a life of its own, but it's not our story.
But remember, theirs was not your ordinary boy meets girl story, for in this tale, the boy, Vili Fualaau, really was a boy, a 6th grader to be exact. And the girl was his 34-year-old teacher, married mother of 4, Mary Kay Letourneau. Today, student and teacher are now husband and wife, living in the quiet suburbs of Seattle. But tonight, they have emerged from their ordinarily private life, knowing full well that their anniversary is yet another opportunity for a prying public to judge them. Why did you decide to do it? I'm very pleased that you did. I'm pleased that you trusted me. But why did you decide to do it?
Well, it is our 10-year anniversary, and we already know that no matter how protective we are, there's going to be a wave of intrusion that we can't stop. So it's about doing the most responsible thing to protect our girls for the inevitable.
You'll meet their 2 girls, now teenagers, later. But first, we want to reacquaint you with the story that captured the country nearly 2 decades ago, an illicit love affair that became the scandal heard around the world.
La historia de Mary Kay Letourneau.
There is a hearing scheduled today for Mary Kay Letourneau.
After being found meeting with a teenage former lover. She was arrested yesterday.
It was salacious, it was scandalous, and it was completely shocking.
The year, 1997. Her life seemed picture perfect. Mary, the beautiful blonde with the handsome husband and 4 adorable children. But she was harboring an unthinkable secret. The once doting mother, an elementary school teacher, was having an affair with a 13-year-old former student.
A 35-year-old teacher who had sex with a 13-year-old 6th grader.
By the end of that summer, that secret was exposed.
A 35-year-old teacher has an affair with a 13-year-old student, becomes pregnant with his child.
Pregnant with her young lover's child. A media firestorm ignited.
Good morning. Please be seated.
Mary pled guilty to child rape and lost custody of her newborn baby daughter. She was released from prison after only a few short months under the condition that she stay away from her former student.
I give you my word that it will not happen again.
But less than a month later, amazingly, she broke that promise, risking it all. She violated her parole, snuck out in the dead of night for another illicit rendezvous with her barely adolescent lover. The couple caught by police in this car. She was sent back to finish the rest of her prison sentence.
These violations are extraordinarily egregious and profoundly disturbing. The suspended sentence is hereby revoked, and the original sentence of 89 months is imposed.
But there would be yet another bombshell. Mary was pregnant again, and this time she would give birth behind bars. When she was finally released in 2004,
Can you tell us how it is to be out?
After serving 7.5 years, along with almost every other journalist, I wanted to interview her. She agreed to sit down with me. Hello, Mary. Hi. I traveled to Seattle, and while I was able to meet Vili Fualaau, interviewing him was off limits. Does this age difference bother you at all?
I'm sure we both wish that we were closer in age so that we would have the longest time possible with each other.
Do you plan to marry Vili?
We've always planned that, and it hasn't changed.
Today, Mary is 53. Vili is 31, and this time around, he agreed to join us for the interview. Mary, we last spoke 10 years ago. I can't believe that, but it was. And you had just been released from prison. Now you two have been married for 10 years. What's the marriage like? Fill me in.
Well, it's marriage. It's more taking care of the children, and of course, marriage is great.
Have there been 10 good years?
10 good years?
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever a full 10 good years in marriage, but, you know, you have your ups and downs in marriages. But, you know, matters is how you pull through all the bad times.
Tell me about your wedding. You got married how long after you got out of prison?
Well, I think it was about 10 months. The wedding, it was fun to plan.
I take you, Vili, to be my constant best friend.
Theirs was a lavish ceremony held at a winery in Washington State. Among the 250 guests, 2 of Mary's children from her first marriage, her daughters, with Vili, served as the flower boys.
If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. If being right means being without you, I'd rather live a wrongdoing life. Your mom and daddy say it's a shame, it's a downright disgrace.
Right, disgrace. It is a downright disgrace. Show enough. Sang it, Luther Ingram. That's Luther Ingram, not Luther Vandross. Luther Ingram. If loving you is wrong. Katherine Massey Book Club returns. Context of white supremacy. Gus T, renegade, worthless Negro from Virginia, back in 2006. Call it Mary Kay Land. My vision for the Katherine Massey Book Club was not that we were going to take a month off. Perish the thought. When do we do that? My vision was I was going to go to Milwaukee. I was going to take the 2 weeks to cover the trial. Obviously no book club while, we're in court. But once the proceedings were done, I thought maybe I could do the book club while in Milwaukee, but that was goofy too. It was an immersive experience being in Dahmerland, and now I'm back ready to roll in the 206 debut study session on Gregg Olsen, Racist Suspects book, nonfiction, of course. If loving you is wrong, on the sad, disgraceful, racist Mary Kay Letourneau incident, 1997, right here in Seattle. White woman, teacher, ends up having sexual intercourse. They put that love. Falling in love, making love with a 12-year-old. Come on. Come on. That right there is why I call it child rape. Don't even call it pedophilia. Just child rape. Yeah, I know she blonde and beautiful and blonde and call things by their proper name. Can I pause 1 second? This here, we had someone who dialed in and said, hey man, I don't care about them other non-black, non-white people. Just focus on black people. Just focus on black people. I live in Seattle. Am I supposed to ignore Mary Kay Letourneau and what that means for the system of white supremacy racism? Vili Fualaau is not classified as black. Not even close. Does that mean this is not an act of white supremacy racism? Really? Maximum racist aggression? Isn't that what this is? Victims guaranteed qualified. I do not subscribe to. We, people classified as black, and maybe those of us born in the U.S. should just focus on ourselves in solving this problem. I don't even think that's logical. I'm going to pay attention to and study, what did Mary Kay Letourneau do to the 12-year-old? Why am I studying Mary Kay? One, I live in 206. I brag about living on the plantation of 206. That's area code for Seattle. Why else am I studying it? I guess hang that question out there. Do you hear people when they talk about this incident, do they say Mary Kay Letourneau is a racist, a maximum racist, because all those white children in Seattle, she could have found a white boy. Why did you pick out the non-white boy as your lover. Is this an act of racism, you all, as we go through what you know about this case? Think about that. Why else am I talking about this case? The late, great Neely Fuller Jr. That was in my brain computer from the beginning. He passed away this year. We certainly got to put our time in honoring and recognizing his brilliance and all the decades of counter-racist labor he invested in trying to solve the problem, produce justice. Fuller really is like the only person that I heard, not from an emotional standpoint, from a standpoint of logic and evidence, talked about the incorrectness of white people engaging in sexual intercourse with non-white people. Scientific and logical, Fuller emphasized in all aspects of racism, but especially Area 8. Especially Area 8. I sat in Seattle on 15th Street in Capitol Hill, no less, in 2008. The cows had been kicked off the air. University of Washington's radio station. We had been kicked off the air right at the end of 2000, like December, and I mean right close to the end of December 2007. They kicked us off the air. I think we did 2 programs that December before the quarter ended, and then we were booted off the air right when they went to winter break. And so January 2008, New Year, I called Mr. Fuller talking about racism, white supremacy, and specifically I'm talking to him about, wow, I was stunned. I had just been able to read his code book in 2007, and our radio program had began in 2007. We had been talking about his concepts, the no sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, seeing white people and non-white people respond violently sometimes, getting emotional and hostile. It was stunning at the time, and so I was explaining all of that to him, and he said, oh yeah, it's vital, it's important, and that is it's mandatory component of the system of white supremacy. You got to rape these non-white people. They enjoy that. Why do all this hard work? And he said that, but it's racism every time. It rots the non-white person's brain computer. And he said specifically, it's like Mary Kay Letourneau every time. And I said, oh, what? Really? Who is what? Mary Kay who? And the name is kind of odd too. I said, what is Mary Kay? He said, well, that was the white teacher. She's raping a student. He said, no, he wasn't black, but he's non-white. She's raping this young boy and ended up marrying him and all that. And I said, wow, I've never even heard of this. Which is true at the time, and this is 2007. I never even heard of this. And Fuller said, oh yeah, it was big. And he said, wait a minute. Are you calling from Seattle? Is that what you said? I said, oh yeah, Mr. Man, I'm totally, I haven't connected nothing. I'm so ignorant. I still haven't put it together. I said, oh yeah, I'm proud 206 Fuller. Yes, sir. They said, Mary Kay, that happened in, Lord, what kind of coon? I can't. I'm joking. You know Fuller don't do no name call. I wouldn't put that on Fuller, but boy, you could hear he did take a deep breath like, I cannot believe. Woo. He said that's why I say still learning. I told you black people are not the smartest, and I would have to say amen, Fuller. Still learning. Hang my head in shame. Now I will say I did not live in Seattle in 1997 when all this happened, okay? I didn't get here until like a decade later. That doesn't really make it that much better because this was national news. Fuller was in Washington, D.C., which is about as far away as you can get from Seattle without leaving the continent, and he knew all about this case, all the details and how it applied to his theory on counter-racism and how to replace white supremacy with justice. Gus had actually lived in Seattle for more than 2 years at this point, and I didn't know Nathan about Mary Kay Letourneau. I couldn't have even spelled her name correctly. Embarrassing. Study local history. We're going to get to it right now. And in fact, we're going to scrape the bowl. Gus T said, I'm in Seattle. That means I can get anything I want for this? Yup. That means Cairo, you can go back and get all the news footage? Yup. Counter-racist scholars. Katherine Massey Book Club returns in all its glory. Gregg Olsen, If Loving You Is Wrong, audio segment 1.
If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. Am I wrong to fall so deeply in love?
If Loving You Is Wrong, written by Gregg Olsen, narrated by Kathleen Godwin. Prologue, June 19th, 1996. The night was a pin-pricked blanket over the dull sheen of Puget Sound. Errant seagulls, feathered rats really, teetered on the edge of a dumpster. In an instant they slid inside looking for food before fluttering out and sending white droppings into Jackson Pollock splatters on grungy asphalt, further marked by oil stains and melted bubble gum. Music wafted from one of the boats in the guest moorage section of the marina in Des Moines, Washington, a suburb just south of the Seattle-Tacoma airport. In its setting and size, Des Moines, Washington held little in common with its Midwestern counterpart. The westernmost Des Moines was on Puget Sound, facing west to the Olympic Mountains and Vashon and Maury Islands. It was suburban, yet with the feel of a neighborhood place, where people gathered in crime watches and fed each other's pets when vacations came. Even the name wasn't pronounced the same in Washington as Iowa. The Washington Des Moines was pronounced with the S sound at the end, which gave most everybody not from there great difficulty when learning to say it so incorrectly. That June night, something very disturbing was taking place in Des Moines. And from the moment Dave Shields, 27, began his walk, a very personal story started moving slowly from tragedy to the stuff of sleazy supermarket magazines and sordid tabloid television reports. In time, lawyers, writers, friends, and family of those involved would all lose sight of the one thing that had caught their concern and interest in the first place. It was a woman and a boy, a mother, a teacher, a wife, and a boy. Dave Shields had never wanted to be anything but a cop. Not really, though it was true that he had enlisted in the Coast Guard and had given most of his family and friends the impression that he had a career as a cop of the sea. He wanted nothing more than to be a police officer with his feet on dry ground. Both his grandmother and a close high school friend had died in accidents caused by drunken drivers. The idea that he could be part of a solution to a terrible and senseless problem led him to law enforcement. The former San Diegan came to Seattle with the Coast Guard in 1989. 2 years later, he left in pursuit of his dream. It wasn't easy going. He worked his way up from a fire department job in Des Moines to the marina security job. By the spring of 1996, he was also a reserve police officer in Buckley, a town in the foothills of Mount Rainier, some 45 minutes away. At the marina, he worked graveyard, which he loved. Even if the evening is dead, it is almost always resuscitated around 1 in the morning. Shields and other cops of the night knew that. The last hour before the bars shut down, the exodus of the drunk begins. The hardy party folks make their woozy attempts at demonstrating sobriety. Direct steps to their car, the key ready, the door pulled open without a false move. All police officers, from the parking lot rent-a-cop to the seasoned veteran called back into late-night patrol, know that, although it may be the dead of the night, things happen after 1 in the morning. At the Des Moines Marina, Shields was used to the after-midnight revelers who leave the bars and are drawn to the waterfront to continue the night. Sex and drugs are the usual reason. Kids come down to the water to maraud, smoke, and screw, while their parents drift off to sleep in front of the soft blue glow of television sets that never seem to find a respite from use. Sticky, spent latex condoms sometimes pockmark the parking lot, like the remnants of a water balloon fight. The tide was way out, and in the warmth of the June evening, Dave Shields could smell the salty, rotting mud that passes for a Puget Sound beach. He barely needed a jacket. The air was warming. His uniform was a light blue shirt with a City of Des Moines patch on the shoulders. His pants were black and a duty belt dangling with a radio, flashlight, and pepper spray hung around his waist. Dave Shields looked the part of a cop. He parked his silver and blue security-issue bike and followed the source of loud music down the ramp to the guest moorage in front of the harbormaster's office. When the tide was out, it brought the boats low and widened the beach. The music, some 80s junk, played from a stereo and bounced off the bank of condominiums that fringed the east side of the parking lot. Dave Shields knew the partiers, old guys, some in their late 30s, even 40s, hadn't meant to be a nuisance. The sound carried across the black water and hung in the still air. They turned the volume way down and apologized, and Shields headed back up the ramp to his bike. But at the top of the ramp, something caught his attention. Bursts of red, then white. Dave Shields fixed his clear hazel eyes into the darkness, and in an instant he saw lights flash on a blue Plymouth Voyager with Alaska plates parked in one of the darker areas of the parking lot. The van was facing west. The brake lights tapped again. Some guy's getting a blowjob, he thought. It happened a lot at the marina. Shields and other officers well knew the shadowy form of a man leaned back from the wheel, touching the brakes with an errant foot, while a head popped up into view. From the top of the moorage ramp, he watched it for a second, and the van started up, backing into a landscape island planted with junipers and St. John's wort before rolling a tire up over the curb. The van rolled forward, but when it backed up once more, it hit the curb and ran into the island again. The driver was a slight figure, a young boy, Shields thought, though later he was not so sure. By now, Shields was suspicious. He watched the van, sure that it was a DUI. The van rolled forward and drove slowly, walking pace, through the parking lot. He cocked his head up to his lapel microphone, called dispatch with a possible DUI, and walked along the bushes, not wanting to lose the van by returning for his bike. The young officer continued walking in the shadows 30 or 40 feet behind the van as it crawled south along the edge of the parking lot, abutting the cliff of condominiums. The van turned right, followed along the docks, then turned left again toward Anthony's home port. The restaurant was closed and the parking lot nearly empty. The pace of the van was odd because it was so slow. The officer wondered how the van had enough momentum to make it over the speed bumps that interrupted the asphalt every few yards. The van stopped for a few seconds and went around the restaurant's waterfront eating deck before circling back around once more. "What are they doing?" he thought. "Did they see me?" The van pulled into a spot in front of a cyclone fence on the edge of the restaurant parking lot, and its lights went dark. On the corner of the lot, just in front of the condos, Dave Shields waited for Des Moines' finest to show up. Blonde-haired, light-complected Rich Nybush arrived first and checked in with the young security guard. Nybush was a favorite of Shields, the kind of officer that he aspired to be, direct, professional, and even-keeled. Dave filled in the officer on what he had seen. As Rich Nybush and another officer, Bob Cheetah, approached, they fixed a spotlight on the van. Nybush could see a woman move from the back and slide into the driver's seat. By then, Sergeant Robert Collins was there too. The officers pulled closer to the van and turned on their flashing lights. Nybush got out and walked toward the woman driver. A swipe of light from his flashlight also revealed the figure of a boy under a sleeping bag. The officers exchanged glances. Bob Cheetah went to the driver's side to talk with a woman. Nybush stayed on the passenger side. "Get out of the van, please," Cheetah said. Nybush went around the van to open the driver's door and called to the boy in the back, but there was no answer. The light filled the interior, and the officer could see that seats were folded down as if to form a kind of bed. The boy laid motionless, feigning sleep. "What is going on here?" the officer asked. The blonde woman offered no answer. It was as if she didn't hear his words. After some prodding, she gave her name as Mary Letourneau. She was a schoolteacher from Shorewood Elementary in the Highline School District. There was no problem. There was no reason to interrogate her. "Why were you in the back of the van with the boy?" Sergeant Collins asked. Mary Kay said she was watching Vili overnight because his mother worked a late shift. She told the officers that she and her husband, Steve, had had an altercation less than an hour before, and she and the boy left. "I decided to teach him a lesson," she said, "and not return until after he went to work in the morning." She explained that Steve left at 3:30 a.m. for a job handling baggage for Alaska Airlines. "We're just trying to get some sleep before returning home after my husband leaves for work," she said. Sergeant Collins radioed for the Normandy Park police to check the Letourneau residence to see if Steve Letourneau would be able to back up his wife's story. A bit later, Des Moines radioed back that no one answered the front door. Next, the sergeant asked Mary Kay what she was wearing. His flashlight washed over her to reveal a layering of 4 T-shirts and a beige skirt. She had on a thin jacket, no socks, and sandals. Later, officers would differ on what the woman had on that night. Nybush thought she was only wearing a T-shirt. "I did not notice a skirt," he wrote later in his report. Sergeant Collins told Mary Kay that they were taking Vili into protective custody. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she protested. She was a teacher, a friend of the family's. There was nothing improper going on in the back of the van. She told them she taught at Shorewood Elementary. She said she was 32. The officer didn't seem too concerned, telling her that her story made sense, but there was an appearance of impropriety. The woman was wearing a nightie or a T-shirt, and, as far as Shields and the officers could see, nothing else. What's she doing dressed like that coming down here? Shields wondered. By then, Dave Shields had moved closer to the van. Whatever was happening was not dangerous, and, without a doubt, far more interesting than lingering back by the condos. The woman was very pretty. Even years later, Shields said he remembered thinking, "Boy, she's got great legs." It was Cheetah who spoke to the marina security guard. The cop's dark eyes appeared mystified. "The kid's like only 12 or 13 years old," he said, his voice trailing off. "And I think he was putting his clothes back on." Shields shook his head. "Oh, shit," he said. "Maybe they were having sex?" Nybush radioed for more help. Another sergeant arrived a few minutes later. Something was wrong. She wasn't really scared, but she seemed just a little nervous, Shields said later. The officers pressed for answers and grew more concerned the more evasive Mary Kay became. He wondered if she was being held captive by the boy, or perhaps he was being held against his will. "Who is back there?" Mary Kay didn't answer. "What's his name?" Again, no answer. Finally, she said it was Vili Fualaau, a student of hers. "How old is the boy?" Cheetah asked. Mary Kay hesitated for a moment before answering, 18. The officer told her to wake him, but when she refused, he yelled at the boy to wake up. He wanted to talk with him, but the figure didn't stir. "What gives here?" The Des Moines officer called out again. He'd seen his share of fakers, and it was clear the kid was awake. His dark eyes were open, though his head lay motionless. Finally, after another admonition, he lifted his head and climbed out from under the sleeping bag. A few moments later, Vili Fualaau told the officer that he was 14 years old, but when asked for proof, he came up short. Of course he had no driver's license and no Washington State ID card. He was only a kid. Vili said he had been staying at the Letourneau house that night when a fight between Mary Kay and her husband, Steve, made him upset. He left the house and walked down the hill to the QFC store on Marine View Drive. It wasn't far from the Letourneau home in neighboring Normandy Park, which was on a ridge just above the shopping center. Mary Kay picked him up in the van, and they drove to the marina for sleep. Mary Kay Letourneau's story seemed odd, maybe even suspect, though it matched Vili's. She became irritated. She told them they were being too extreme, taking it too far. When the police told Mary Kay Letourneau that they were going to take Vili to the station, she became insistent. She flat out didn't want to leave him alone. She was, she explained, responsible for him. Just before the patrol cars went back up the hill away from Puget Sound and the marina, Shields huddled with another of the officers. "We were kind of talking behind the patrol cars. The whole thing seemed fishy. We were convinced, but our hands were tied. He's in the back trying to put his clothes back on, and she's wearing this little nightie thing. She didn't look as old as she is, but I knew she was older than 18. the security cop later said. Back at the Des Moines police station, the officers failed to reach Neely Fualaau at her home in White Center, some 15 minutes to the north. Once more they pressed Mary Kay and Vili for the name of the mother's place of work. Specifics were not forthcoming. "She works for a pie-baking place in Kent," Vili finally said. Neither he nor his teacher could come up with the name. A phone call to the Valley Comm Center turned up the name of a commercial bakery called Plush Pippin. Another call turned up Neely Fualaau. The sergeant told Vili's mother what had transpired that night. She was unconcerned and asked to speak with the pair. After both spoke to her, Neely Fualaau instructed the police officer to leave Mary Kay Letourneau in charge of her son. She had said that she feels completely comfortable with him being with her, and she trusts Mary, and that they could release the boy back to her custody, Shields recalled. What happened that night haunted him when all hell had broken loose, and the world was introduced to Mary Kay and Vili. They had already had sex, or were about to have it, the young Marina officer said later. We all knew it. A day later, the wife of a Des Moines police officer told the director of security for the Highline School District what had happened at the marina between Mary Letourneau and Vili Fualaau. An employee of the school district herself, the cop's wife said her husband had told her that the mother had approved the early morning excursion with the teacher. Though the officers on the scene had felt very uneasy, there wasn't enough evidence that a sex crime had been committed. With no crime, no charges, there would be no official action by the police. A report wouldn't be sent to the district. 2 weeks later, a lieutenant for the police department sent the report to the city attorney for Des Moines. He, too, was uncomfortable with what happened at the marina. It just didn't seem right. Evidently, nothing happened once the report got there. The Highline School District didn't hear another word about the marina, the teacher, and the boy. Not for almost another year. Not until so much had happened that it could never be undone. Chapter 1. In reality, it was the Tony homes of Lemon Heights, perched on the scorched hills above Tustin, that gave the city the nickname the Beverly Hills of Orange County. The majority of Tustin was Middle America, with neighborhoods of mostly unpretentious tracts of stucco and tile-roofed houses, filled with children freckled, tanned, or burned by the sun. The wealthy living on Lemon Heights looked down on Tustin, or rather past it, to the waters of the Pacific. When John and Mary Schmitz and their sons, Johnny, Joey, and baby Jerry, moved into the one-story house with a lone palm tree on Brittany Woods Drive in Tustin in the early 1960s, on the surface they were a good Catholic family with moderate means. Yet, if there was anything to distinguish the family from others in Tustin, it was the indisputable appeal of the parents. John was dark and dashing, with the rigid posture of a military man. Mary, with her soft eyes and sweet smile, could play demure. But she was sure of herself in ways that few women allowed themselves at the time. John Schmitz and Mary Swear had met at a college graduation party at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where both had earned degrees. She was a chemist who set aside a promising career to support the man she loved. But it was more than love. It was also the marriage of conservative and religious ideals that made them such a good fit. John and Mary were a team in life, the afterlife, and in time, the purgatory that was California politics. An 8-year stint in the Marine Corps in El Toro, where John was a pilot and helicopter aviator, brought them to California. Like so many others who made the military migration during the 40s and 50s, they saw California as a golden hope for a life of opportunity. When John left the Marines, like his father and father-in-law, he became a teacher. He taught philosophy and government at Santa Ana College. "I'm a good teacher," he once told a reporter. "I've always been able to make a subject interesting. No one falls asleep in my class." Part of what made that a true statement was that the man had an undeniable charisma and wit. He was brash, brilliant, and handsome, with dark hair, dark eyes, and a pencil-thin mustache. John G. Schmitz was on stage whether his audience was a single student or a roomful. He was the center of the world. In the beginning, the lightning rod for attention presided over a family that was the envy of friends and neighbors. They were a devoted family, said one neighbor, who still keeps in touch with John and Mary. The kids all loved each other. It was sort of like the family that prayed together stayed together. Indeed, prayer was an important ritual at the Schmitz home. Visitors to the house then, or any other place the family lived, never recalled a single meal when prayer wasn't a prelude to dining. Life revolved around the church. John sang in the choir at St. Cecilia's, and Mary hauled the children in their station wagon, our Catholic Cadillac, to class each day. To supplement his college instructor's wages, John worked part-time at Disneyland as a cobblestone cop. That made him a real hero among the kids, the neighbor said. Although Mary Kay has memories of her father as that Disney character, she would later tell a friend she wasn't certain if she actually remembered it or had been told about it so often that she had kept it as memory. "It is a glimpse," she told a friend many years later, "when I was 3 years old. Like a Mary Poppins doll I had, or putting my father's hair in curlers at our first house, just a glimpse of my childhood." It was a lovely beginning to what everyone thought would be a wonderful life. Summer nights were filled with the laughter of the boys playing kick the can, hide and seek. Summer days, they played baseball or football games that stretched for hours. In time, the family would get a German Shepherd that John named Kaiser. In the early 1960s, there were still orange groves off Irvine Boulevard, not far from houses lined up in the sun along Brittany Woods Drive. It was a beautiful place and time. California was challenging the East Coast as the center of the universe. The Beach Boys had just released Surfin' Safari, their first big hit. It was sunshine and beaches. And on January 30th, 1962, Mary Katherine Schmitz was born. She would be her father's staunchest ally, and, some would say later, her mother's greatest disappointment. No one wanted to talk about it years later, and no one wanted to put much importance on the fact. What would happen later with Mary Kay was not a bonding problem. But the fact was that Mary Schmitz had an injury that made it impossible to care for her new baby daughter for several weeks. As the baby stayed with the neighbors across the street, her mother convalesced in her bedroom. Later, the woman who cared for the Schmitz's firstborn daughter refused to talk about the cause of Mrs. Schmidt's need for convalescence. She believed it had no influence on their daughter. "They loved Mary Kay then, and they love her now," she said. When John Schmitz returned to Brittany Woods Drive, he always made a beeline for the neighbors to hold his daughter in his arms. Every day. Mary Kay's blonde hair was but a faint, downy glow around her little head. But her brown eyes were enormous. No father could have been more pleased. "Sons are wonderful," said the neighbor who took care of Mary Kay, "but to a father, a daughter is extra special." If mother and daughter didn't bond, as had been suggested, those closest to the family in those early years didn't see it. It appeared that the little blonde-haired girl was her mother's pride. It was true that Mary Schmitz expected a lot from her children, and probably more so from her sons. "When Mary Kay was a little girl," said the neighbor, "I can still see that front bedroom fixed like she was a little princess or something. Mary always seemed to be there to help her, and Mary Kay went right along with it, so she had to be very happy with her mother." No matter how busy they became, no matter where they would live, the Schmitz children were always foremost in their parents' minds, according to the neighbor. "They never forgot the kids," she said. The tide was moving in the direction of conservative upstarts in Orange County, more so than just about anywhere in the country. John Schmitz, with his David Niven mustache and sharp-as-carbide blades wit, was in the right place at the right time in 1964. It didn't matter that he was a card-carrying member of the right-wing John Birch Society, the anti-communist organization founded in 1958 to promote conservative causes. In 1964, when Mary Kay was 2, her father found his arena. he was elected state senator. None were more proud of John's victory than those in Tustin and at St. Cecilia's. He was the pride of the congregation. Choir director Richard Kulda, a conservative, though no John Bircher, admired John Schmitz as a legislator and a man. A re-election followed 2 years later, and, by the end of the decade, a bid for the U.S. Congress. His campaign bumper sticker read, "When you're out of Schmitz, you're out of gear." John has a brilliant mind, witty, conscientious, good-humored. He was not easily ruffled, a fighter pilot. In mortal combat, you cannot get ruffled. You have to be thinking every instant. You've got to use every bit of brain power you have, Richard Kulda remembered. During his 6 years in the California legislature, many argued that his finest achievements were in curtailing sex education in the classroom and limiting the availability of condoms where young people might get their hands on them. More self-discipline is needed, he said. By 1970, 3 more siblings had joined Mary Kay and her 3 older brothers. When Mary Kay was 3, her sister Terry was born, followed by Elizabeth, and lastly Philip, born in March 1970. John and Mary loved having 3 boys, then 3 girls, then a boy. It was so wonderful, and so tragic later, the close family friend and neighbor later said. In the years of his heyday as the king of the quip, John Schmitz became beloved by reporters looking for a loose cannon quote that could guarantee outrage and increased readership. John Schmitz became known more for what he said than what he did. Whenever he opened his mouth, John Schmitz's supporters cheered, and his foes wondered if he'd left enough room for his foot. They like to be called gays, he once said of homosexuals in search of political clout. I prefer to call them queers. Sometimes charm was slipped into the mix, and his remarks came off as one-liners, given like a political Johnny Carson. I may not be Hispanic, but I'm pretty close. I'm a Catholic with a mustache, he said. When the Schmitz family left for Sacramento, or later for Washington, D.C., their good Brittany Woods Drive neighbors' joy for the family was tempered with personal sadness. Though they kept in touch and saw old friends and neighbors whenever they came to town and attended fundraisers, for which Mary Schmitz had made her daughter's dresses, it wasn't the same. When we got to Washington, John took us to the White House and everything. I got to sit in Tip O'Neill's chair, said the neighbor. We were so happy for them. It was June 1970 when John Schmitz moved his family to Washington, D.C., to fulfill the time remaining on a congressional seat won in a special election. Mary Kay would later say she made the transition easily, basking in the attention reflected from her father's admirers. There were parties to host, Easter eggs to roll on the White House lawn, and photographers to smile for at every turn. Heady stuff for an 8-year-old girl. Her father was at the top of his game at the time, and he knew it. Things were happening for her mother, too. Mary Schmitz was more than a wife. She was a savvy political partner. She was passionate about her political and religious beliefs, and every bit as adept, many felt more so, as her husband, when it came to tapping into the strengths of the conservative constituency. She attracted a following by campaigning against the ERA, and was dubbed a West Coast Phyllis Schlafly. Like her husband, she was a fervent right-to-lifer who considered abortion nothing short of murder. If John Schmitz was the leader of the band when it came to Orange County Republican politics, as one adversary later characterized him, his wife was equally powerful and accomplished. Mary Schmitz was a captivating public speaker and an articulate crusader for conservative causes. She was more than just a woman standing behind her man, though she espoused the ideal that that's where women belonged. Some friends of the family felt sorry for Mary Kay and her sisters Terry and Elizabeth. The emphasis in that household was always on the sons. It was a man's world, and John and Mary Schmitz made no bones about it and the fact that they wanted to keep it that way. When the Equal Rights Amendment died, Mary Schmitz had a cardboard tombstone put up in her front yard as a cheeky reminder of her greatest achievement. Their prejudice extended down to the women in their family, said a friend and political adversary of the Schmitzes many years later. Women were low on the social scale. Here was this woman espousing anti-woman values. Her own daughter, who was as bright as hell, could have gone to Stanford like her brother did, but didn't. It wasn't the money, though most people knew that the Schmitz family wasn't rich. The truth was that John Schmitz, political gadfly extraordinaire, could have gotten his daughters into any school in the country, if he had wanted to, if his wife had wanted to. But Mary Kay was a girl. What was she going to do? The friend asked. Go off and get married and have kids. Chapter 2. It had been foggy every morning for a week before the sun burned off the milky haze to reveal the sparkling waters of the Orange County coastline. In the afternoon, the temperatures would rise near 80 degrees, and air mattresses were rolled out, beach balls pumped up. But half the summer was gone before the new house at 10 Mission Bay Drive in Corona del Mar would be Southern California, complete with a swimming pool. A pool was as necessary on Spyglass Hill as orthodontics for a perfect smile, a shiny new car, and a pretty wife who made weekly visits to the hair salon. It was de rigueur. When the Schmitz family moved back to California from Washington, D.C., they did not return to Tustin. Instead, they moved up, way up. Just south of Newport Beach, Corona del Mar was an area of affluence and power. It was hibiscus and bird of paradise. John and Mary built a beautiful new home in the high hills above the Pacific. While it was true that only one room in the house had an ocean view, Mary Kay's, they could see the blue when they drove toward town and the coast highway. On Saturday, August 11th, 1973, John and Mary hosted a barbecue party to celebrate summer and the completion of the pool just 2 days before. It was a pleasant mix of a few political cronies and friends, including the family from the old Brittany Woods neighborhood in Tustin. It was the year after John Schmitz ran for President of the United States on the American Independent Party ticket. He didn't win, of course. He hadn't expected to. He ran to keep the dream alive. Mary Kay, 11, and her baby brother Philip, 3, joined the other Schmitz children, John, 18, Joe, 16, Jerry, 14, Terry, 7, and Elizabeth, 5, and kids from the neighborhood in the water, as the adults enjoyed cold drinks and the perfect vision of a California summer day, the blue water of the pool, the orange of the sun, and the sound of happy children. Nothing could be lovelier. Those who were there that day recalled the event as being a typical Schmitz affair. Devoted friends presided over by the charming John, and of course Mary, the mother of his children, the soldier for her husband's dreams. By Monday afternoon, all of the joy of the pool would be drained forever. Its blue, shimmering surface would always be a backyard reminder, silent and still, of a family tragedy. Just after 3:30 that afternoon, Mary Schmitz removed the plastic life preserver from her toddler son's slender body and sent him to the bathroom. She went inside to work in her office while Mary Kay and her brother Jerry played in the shallow end. A few minutes later, maybe a half hour, no one could pinpoint how much time had passed. Someone noticed that the 3-year-old was missing. It took only an instant to find him at the bottom of the swimming pool. Somehow, though Mary Kay and Jerry were in the same waters, neither had seen Philip slip into the water and splash. No one saw him struggle. He just slipped under and was gone. Herb Armstrong, a 32-year-old Newport Beach motorcycle cop, was the first on the scene. A distraught Mary Schmitz, who kept repeating the same sentence, met him. "I only left him for a minute, just a minute." She led him through the house to the pool where he found little Philip, who was as blue as the water, tiny and lifeless, lying in the sun on the edge of the pool. Water matted his dark blonde hair to his small head. His eyes were closed. The other Schmitz children watched from the inside of the house as their mother and the motorcycle cop hovered over the baby. Everything was spinning, Everything was happening so fast. Newport Beach firemen arrived moments later and tried to revive him with oxygen and heart massage, but the effort appeared futile. Seconds later, a tornado of helicopter blades fanned the brush in the vacant land behind 10 Mission Bay Drive. A police helicopter landed. Herd Armstrong cradled the little boy in his arms and handed him over the fence that cordoned off the Wild of the Hills from the groomed yard. The hospital was only 4 or 5 miles away. No one said whether the boy would make it or not, but most already knew that it was bad. That night when I got home, my wife knew that my day had involved a tragedy with a child. She always knew, Herd Armstrong said many years later. Whenever something happened with a child, it lingered for days. I wasn't myself. The doctors at the intensive care unit at Hoag Memorial in Newport Beach couldn't save the baby. He was pronounced dead 18 hours later. "We were all there," Mary Schmitz said to a reporter. "I don't know how it could have happened." The headline on Tuesday in the Corona del Mar Pilot was marked in letters more than an inch high. John Schmitz's son dies in Newport. Those who knew him then and later would all agree that it was the most devastating time John Schmitz would find his name on the front page, though there were many, many times when the press was less than kind, or when scandal would riddle his image, his world. Richard Kulda, the choir director from St. Cecilia in Tustin, was devastated by the news of the drowning. His wife and Mary Schmitz had been pregnant at the same time with their last babies. He prayed for the Schmitz family, but he knew that they'd be able to get through the tragedy because their Catholic faith was so strong. "Mary and John were good troopers," Richard said later. "They have to carry on. You have a duty." Mary's face was so drawn. She obviously suffered just horribly when he died. When you have a lot of children, it is a comfort. Philip James Schmitz was buried in a little white casket in a grave in Ascension Cemetery near El Toro. Tourists now tromp past the child's grave to pay their respects to Nicole Brown Simpson and to remember her tragic life. They know nothing of the boy buried in the same cemetery and the impact of his death on another woman, a sister. Years later, people would look back at Philip's drowning to search for answers as to its possible effect on his oldest sister and what happened to her more than 20 years later. How did it weigh on Mary Kay's mind? Did she feel responsible? Was she? Willard Volt, a family friend and a political supporter of John Schmitz's, understood through his conversations with the family that Mary Kay had, in fact, been in charge of watching Philip. "I don't know if it triggered what mental illness she got. I know it had to be a very heavy item." Willard stumbled for words. "I'm saying it could be related," he said. "I know that the event could be the source of some of Mary Kay's disorder. Jerry might have been there at the same time," he said later, "but I know that Mary Kay had been given the responsibility of watching Philip. It was horrible, horrible." It was shortly after the drowning that a girl named Michelle Reinhardt met Mary Kay Schmitz. Over the years the subject would come up, and there was no doubt that Mary Kay's heart was broken when Philip died that August afternoon. But she never told Michelle that she felt responsible. She adored her little brother. She said he had more life at 3 than most people have. He was really a bright spirit. It wasn't her fault. She had nothing to do with it. Even so, Michelle would later admit that the 3-year-old's death did have a profound impact on Mary Kay. There were times when Mary Kay didn't want her children near the water, especially a pool. She was even reluctant to let her kids take lessons. The drowning was a piece of the puzzle that, when put together with other traumas, explained how Mary Kay ended up where she did. The thing that is so phenomenally amazing is how she continues to deny that any of these things had any impact on her, Michelle said later. The drowning also had an impact of incredible consequence to John Schmitz. "That's when we felt that John really lost it," said a neighbor from Tustin, alluding to events that would take place a decade later. Mary Schmitz was stoic about the loss of her baby. It wasn't her style to make a scene, to toss her body on the casket, or even to shed a tear. Not in public, anyway. "They took it better than most people. I would have been very emotional," said a friend. It was a family tragedy, the kind many families must deal with. The Schmitzes were the kind that could deal with it. Years later, Mary Kay would tell a friend that her family never blamed her for the drowning. The whole idea of blaming someone for an accident was an unnecessary hurt. "I am upset if anyone blamed anyone," Mary Kay said. "It is such a sacred, private tragedy. No blame should be put on anyone, and none ever was. Not on me, not on my mother." The day before Philip drowned, Mary Kay was out by the pool. Her baby brother, fearless and determined, wanted to show his sister that he could swim. As she watched, the 3-year-old stepped to the edge of the pool and jumped in. He sank to the bottom like a stone, and Mary Kay went to get him. It wasn't but a second, but I looked through the water at him. He was standing on the bottom of the pool looking up at me. I can still see his eyes, looking at me and saying so much. I thought I could, but I guess I can't. Save me. And I did. It wasn't but a second when I reached down for him and pulled him from the water. His eyes had said so much to me then, and they speak to me now. His eyes haunt me now. Chapter 3. It didn't happen every time, but sometimes when Michelle Reinhardt Jarvis drove her white VW convertible Lambie up the hills above the ocean near Corona del Mar, she'd catch a whiff of a fragrance that would send her back, way back, to the time when she and Mary Kay Schmitz were young girls. When a little moisture from the Pacific mixed with the fragrance of the wildflowers, the bougainvillea and the eucalyptus, it would come back to her. It was 1998, and like Mary Kay, Michelle was a mother. She had 2 little girls, Danielle and Kylie, and a son, Michael, named for her husband, a multimedia developer and designer. Michelle's life in Southern California was the busy working mother with never enough time routine she had once imagined Mary Kay's life had been up in Seattle. She pulled her car to the side of a canyon road and looked around. Bleached white condominiums and gated communities of pink stucco had obliterated much of the visual beauty of a raw landscape. There had been a time when hawks circled and coyotes sometimes made it down to where the houses lined up in glistening rows on Spyglass Hill. There had been a time when 2 girls slid down the hills on paper bags, or spent all day following a coyote's trail. Time had marched on, and all of that was gone now. But even all of the progress couldn't mask the scent that brought back memories, the sweet, salty smell of the ocean and canyon, the smell of summertime and youth. In a moment, Michelle could feel the wind blowing through the open windows of Mary Kay's bedroom on the nights when she'd sleep over on the floor next to her friend. She could hear the water of the swimming pool splashing against its tiled walls while the 2 of them pretended to flee from sharks. Jaws is coming. Years later, when everyone in the world would have an opinion about her friend, Michelle would sometimes roll down her window and breathe it all in and remember. And she'd think how far Mary Kay had tumbled from Spyglass Hill, and how inevitable she believed it all had been. Mary Schmitz had priorities, and none of her children felt the need to make excuses for it. It was the way they lived. The enormous house at 10 Mission Bay on Spyglass Hill had marble floors and carpeting that cost more than $40 a yard. The furnishings on the main level were exquisite. Years later, Mary Kay still marveled over a couch her mother had selected, and how stunning the silk organza fabric covering its cushions had been. To be sure, upstairs was another world. There was no matching furniture, no gorgeous crystal, and no exquisite figurines. No family photos lined the walls. The children's bedrooms were spare in their furnishings, to say the least. Mary Kay's bed had no frame. Her windows went without curtains or screens. Facing west, her corner bedroom would fill with the hot air of the California sun. Some of the Schmitz children used drawers set on the floor to hold their underwear and socks. There was so much mold and mildew in the bathroom that I couldn't even use it, Michelle Jarvis recalled. But downstairs, everything was picture perfect. Mary Kay would later say that it didn't bother her. She was happy to sprawl out on the $40 a yard carpet or flop on a beanbag chair when she watched TV. What do those kinds of things matter? She asked later. My mother's priorities were elsewhere. We were in private school. She entertained downstairs. We weren't put upon. So what if our couch in the TV room was given to us? We were very happy indeed. Michelle and Mary Kay met through their mothers, who were casual acquaintances and played tennis together. With Mary Kay's school friends in Costa Mesa at St. John the Baptist, she was isolated from kids outside of her siblings. Michelle lived in East Bluff, just down the road from Spyglass. Mary Schmitz was the one who suggested getting the girls together. They were in grade school at the time. It seemed a good idea to have a friend close by. It was an idea, however, some would later suggest, that Mrs. Schmitz would have liked to reconsider. Mary Kay and Michelle became inseparable. I practically lived there. I annoyed her mother to no end, Michelle said later. She always called me that Michelle. She was dismissive to anyone whose last name wasn't Schmitz and who couldn't help her husband's political career. I couldn't help her in her quest to be Mother of the Year or whatever her pet project was that time. Michelle and Mary Kay's mother didn't hit it off, because as far as Michelle could tell, Mary Schmitz cared more about herself and her husband's career. The kids appeared to be window dressing. A Rose Kennedy wannabe, Michelle said later. While that could have been true, it was also true that Mary Schmitz was not interested in any of Mary Kay's friends, especially Michelle, whom Mary Kay said her mother found abrupt and crass. Mary Schmitz was a righteous and busy woman with no time for children that weren't her own. She was the type of woman who would look past a kid in a room and address her own child. "Don't you think it's time for Michelle to go home?" She didn't say, "Michelle, we have some things we need to do. Do you need a ride home?" It was something they didn't talk about at first, but in time it was the basis for the bond that only strengthened over time. From the darkness of a shared childhood trauma came the light of their friendship. Michelle and Mary Kay shared a common experience that ensured a unique closeness. Both had been molested by a relative. "I think back on when we first talked about it," Michelle later said. "One of her brothers molested her, but I don't think he actually had sex with her. I think for her it was the fear and the betrayal from somebody she loved. It happened. I knew about it. I was 10 or 11 years old and dealing with my own." Mary Kay told Michelle how, as a 9- and 10-year-old, she used to search for new places in which she could hide when their parents were away. "Can you imagine her cowering in some closet, praying to God that her brother didn't find her?" Michelle asked later. "And nobody there to protect her. Where the hell were her parents?" On the campaign trail, accepting an award, appearing on television. Michelle didn't fault John Schmitz as much as she blamed Mary Schmitz. A daughter needs a mother to talk to. John Schmitz was running around Washington, D.C. or Sacramento trying to change the world. Mary Schmitz was yammering on television about the virtues of taking care of children and keeping the home fires burning. The hypocrisy of it all still angered Michelle more than 2 decades later. She's never been accepted by her mother, never. Mary Kay couldn't even tell her mother what her brother had done at that age. She knew how her mother would react. She knew her mother would probably blame her. Mary Kay would later describe Michelle's recollections as an exaggeration and dismiss the sexual abuse as nothing more than fondling. "I don't even feel I was violated, not my body. I was not forced into anything. But when I decided it was wrong, I said no, and guess what happened? It stopped." John Schmitz wasn't home much, but when he was, he always gave the girls a hug and a kiss. He joked with his sons. He made them laugh. He had a way of taking a song and twisting it around and making it his own, and his children loved him for it. But no one in the family would argue that he didn't have a favorite. His first daughter, all blonde and brown-eyed, was the apple of her father's eye from the first moment he held her. She could sit for hours still and quiet as he read, just to be near him. He called his adoring and most beautiful daughter Mary O'Cake, Mary Cake, finally just Cake. No one else in the family adopted the nickname. "No one dared to," Mary Kay said later. "It was something only for my father to say." In Mary Kay's eyes, her dad could do no wrong. Her mother was always in the way, always the killjoy. When John Schmitz became interested in learning more about his genealogical background, he made several trips to Europe. an excited Mary Kay told Michelle one time that through her father's research, he discovered that he was related to the Romanian royal family through an illegitimate son of one of the kings. Mary Schmitz did not want the story out because it was too embarrassing for the family, Michelle said later. She forbade them to talk about it. Mary Schmitz was not a demonstrative mother. She was not hovering in the kitchen with a pan of brownies in the oven and a piñata to be finished on the table. Not like her eldest daughter would grow up to be before her world would crash. Yet Mary Kay, like any young girl, coveted the attention of her mother. But few saw any. I never, ever, in all those years, saw her mother hug or kiss her or show any type of affection in any way, ever. I never heard her say, "I love you." Nothing, Michelle said later. To the outside world, the family was golden. John, the oldest, was the all-American, smart and good-looking. Joe was overshadowed a bit by John, but he was also bright and political brochure ready. Jerry was intelligent, sensitive, and certainly the most caring and protective of Mary Kay. The girls, Mary Kay, Terry, and Liz, were cute, quiet, and relegated to the background. According to Michelle, it was all by design. The girls were raised to be homemakers. The boys were going to be lawyers and politicians, and the dynasty that Mary Schmitz had nurtured in Orange County would prosper. From the time that she was a girl, Mary Kay was raised to smile and wave, to look good, to be polite, to be on. All the time. Political families are always on stage. Every weekend during a campaign, there was a parade, a fundraiser, and a dinner. No one could deny that the Schmitzes were a gorgeous family. Handsome boys and adorable little girls all lined up around their charismatic father and perfectly coiffed mother. They were a facade family, said an adult friend of the family, a Hollywood set. Years later, some would wonder if Mary Kay Letourneau had paid a price for the deception that was her idyllic California childhood. How had being a public family affected her? How had it affected her to have to smile, even when she didn't want to, because being public was the way her father made his living? Maybe she had a mental breakdown? Maybe living that life wasn't healthy? I can just imagine the conversations in that household, said the friend. We're not rich people, but we have values. God has entrusted us with this. Even as a young girl, Mary Kay Schmitz loved the mirror. No one could really fault her for it. She was, without a doubt, beautiful. The only blonde in the family, when she practiced piano in the normally off-limits living room, she often stopped to dance in front of a large mirror. She dreamed of studying music at Juilliard. She could dance, sing, and act. Maybe a career in musical theater? She was disciplined and enjoyed the control she had over her body. And because her mother taught her that a girl must always look her best, Mary Kay took the lesson to heart and made certain that she always looked put together. Primping was one thing, but as they grew into adolescence, Michelle began to find it excessive. As Mary Kay grew older, it seemed to border on the obsessive. There were times when Michelle wanted to take a baseball bat to Mary Kay's head to put her out of the misery of standing in front of the mirror. It took her at least 2.5 hours to get ready to go anywhere. She would mess with one curl on her head for a good 20 minutes before she got it exactly the way she wanted it to be, Michelle recalled. After a while, when they were teens, Michelle couldn't take it anymore. Why is that one curl so important? How long does it take to get ready? She asked. Cake never had an answer. It just was.
Call her Cake, C-A-K-E, Cake. Katherine Massey Book Club. Y'all remember they got that song? I beat that B word. I beat that B with a bat. I beat that B with a bat. Y'all remember that one? That was a golden oldie from about 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. Y'all remember that one? Y'all don't remember that one? It reminded me, she told me, I'm going to crack her across her skull with this bat if you don't get out of that mirror with them curls. Katherine Massey Book Club. Context of white supremacy. We will resume chapter 4. Got to see how many times blonde is in this book. It's in here a whole bunch. A whole bunch. A whole bunch. I might even be curious to see how many times is blonde in the book. How many times is the word rape in the book? The number to dial, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The email untiljustice@gmail.com. Do want to make sure that I get on the record. We are crisscrossed here. When I say crisscrossed, the author for this book is Gregg Olsen, white man. The narrator for the audiobook is a white woman. Now, we've had this sort of gender crisscross before. When we read Harriet A. Washington's Medical Apartheid, black female author, there was a black male narrator. And we've had this a few times throughout the Katherine Massey book club history. I think Stupid Talk, Crazy Talk, written by a white man. We had a female narrator. For myself, that has never, ever made an impact at all. I do not care as long as they read it correctly. It's accurate to what's in the book. Things are not being mispronounced. It's done in a professional manner. I do not care if the gender gets switched up. Sometimes it's done deliberately, as in this case. It may have been done deliberately. I think that's been the case some other times where it's been a female-dominant narrative. They put a female voice to it, even though it was written by a male author. But that's just, this is written by a white man, but we got a female narrator. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I can see my vision. If I had been in lame Milwaukee and we had been reading this, oh, I would have had misty eyes. Puget Sound, Tukwila. I've been all these places, like Tukwila and Des Moines. Oh, well. All right. Back in Seattle, 206. Yeah. Now, question. We're reading this here book, and I'm telling you, Neely, I don't know if he read this book, but Neely Fuller Jr., he knew all about Mary Kay Letourneau, how it applied to his theory of white supremacy racism. Is this racism? Oh, Mary Kay, white female teacher, strikes again. Do we think, hey, I'm not going to pick a white boy. I like 'em young, dark. I want that Polynesian boy. Yes, give me that dark. Is this an act of racism? Do you hear this discussed as an act of racism? We'll keep that in mind as we proceed, because it doesn't even look like they're saying racism in this here book, even though we already got the John Birch Society, but they didn't say they were racist down in California, but we'll get to all that. Let us see. Okay, get to folks who wrote in and dialed in respectively. Let us see. Folks who dialed in, and again, is this an act of racism? Do you hear people when they talk about this case, act of racism? If you remember it, because this is one of the golden oldies, right? If you remember this case, right, from Lifetime and all of that, do you remember people saying, oh, wow, do you know about that old racist white teacher up there in Seattle raping that young non-white 12-year-old? Isn't that a disgrace, a racist disgrace? That's why you got to be, did you Did people talk about it, or was it just, nope, that's not an act of racism? That's, as, I don't know what it says, love triangle gone bad. I don't know, but it ain't racism, Folks who dialed in, Lauren should be with us, retired firefighter. I'll nab other hands, *61. Let's see.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Evening, Gus. Evening, everyone else. So the question, is this racism, Mary Kay choosing the non-white student? My answer is yes. But I will say, if you would have asked me that same question 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I don't think I would have said yes. But now, like, again, I didn't actually have a definition for racism. I wasn't familiar with Mr. Fuller's concepts, but yeah, I agree. An act of maximum racist aggression. Okay. Actually the intro, before I get to the text, the audio you played before the book started, it called it an illicit love affair that became the scandal heard around the world. And they talked about the 35-year-old teacher having an affair that was used several times, even though Vili was 13 years old. I just don't think that's an affair. Let me see. Oh, wow. I guess we started before chapter 1, but in chapter 1 it did say the parents met in Milwaukee. Don't want to forget that. Let me see. Maybe this is weird. The first thing I noticed was him talking about errant seagulls at Des Moines. It's pretty common to have seagulls right by the water. And in the book it said errant seagulls, feathered rats, really. That seemed a little slightly disparaging of the area and seagulls. Also, the author, this is on the first page of the prologue. It said, in time, lawyers, writers, friends, and family of those involved would all lose sight of the one thing that had caught their concern and interest in the first place. It was a woman and a boy, a mother, a teacher, a wife, and a boy. I think it's best that the author makes that claim right at the beginning of the text. Let me see. There was a couple of things that didn't make sense, like when the police actually approached the vehicle in the prologue and they start asking Mary Kay Letourneau questions. She says she was a teacher from Shorewood Elementary in the Highline School District. There was no problem. There was no reason to interrogate her. All right, question. Why were you in the back of the van with the boy? That's a logical question, right? She gives a story or whatever, and she explained that her husband leaves work at 3:30 a.m. and all of this. It wasn't made clear what time it was when the police approached him. And if they did, I missed it, because I really wondered what time it was when all of this was happening. And she said, we're just trying to get some sleep before returning home after my husband leaves for work. Okay. But she was just driving around a little bit ago. She pulls over and then gets in the back of the van probably in order to engage in some sort of sexual activity. So she wasn't trying to get sleep because she had just been driving around. I think she thinks that the police don't know how long she's been stopped there. And she just said a lot of things that didn't make sense. Like, first, she says she's an elementary school teacher. And then she says, okay, so I didn't understand that their elementary school went to grade 6. So I'll say that. But she said the boy was 18 and he was a student. Okay, that doesn't add up. All those things can't be true at the same time. Then the little boy, Vili, says he's 14 years old, and I think he was 12 when this happened. So he's lying about his age. She's lying about his age. Just super suspicious. And the officer, he said, whatever was happening was not dangerous. and without a doubt, far more interesting than lingering back by the condos. The woman was very pretty. Even years later, Shields said he remembered thinking, boy, she's got great legs. Dangerous, able or likely to cause harm or injury. So I was wondering if they would have thought it was dangerous if a black person was found in this state with a white child and they thought they were engaging in some sort of sexual activity, they would have, thought that was dangerous? I don't know. But yeah, the kid, little boy, he's 12, 13 years old. And the officer said, I think he was putting his clothes back on. And also the feigning sleep. I wonder if she told him to do that, to pretend to be asleep. They called the mom, and it said she was unconcerned and asked to speak with the pair. After both spoke with her, Vili Fualaau instructed the police officers to leave Mary Kay Letourneau in charge of her son. And I was just thinking, she's in a precarious position. Not white people are in precarious positions worldwide, but she's on her job working late at night. The police are calling her. Do you really? I don't know, man. Can she really leave work and go pick up the little boy? I mean, and I don't know, man. I'm not sure how she comes to that decision. It doesn't seem like the correct one. I don't know. That seems. Yeah. The two parents, they met at a college graduation party. John Schmitz and Mary Seward, this is Mary Kay Letourneau's mother. They met at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Did Marquette University come up? That came up in the Dahmer book too, I think. And also, it said she was a chemist who set aside a promising career to support the man she loved. Dahmer's father, Lionel, wasn't he a chemist as well? In time, the family would get a German Shepherd that John named Kaiser. Interesting, made me think of White Dog. When Mary Kay Letourneau was born, she stays with the neighbors when she comes back. That lack of a bonding experience between white mother and child. I've seen that before. Like, that was an issue with Kaczynski, and it might have come up with Dahmer as well. I don't know, man. These white women just seem to be really cold towards their children. Like, when we read these books, I don't remember having a lot of books where they're talking about just really warm, loving, caring white women as their mothers. And if I'm missing it, somebody bring that up, because it seems like it happens a lot. The dad, John Schmitz, he said they like to be called gays. He once said of homosexuals in search of political clout, I prefer to call them queers. Not encouraging the use of the term queer or any name calling, but I do think it's important that when people are using terms that are misleading or inaccurate, that you or I should use terms that are more accurate or that reduce confusion. I don't think we should be afraid to do that. Words are really important. Let me see. Oh, and the equal rights, right? Their prejudice extended down to the women in their family, said a friend and political adversary of the Schmitzes many years later. Women were low on the social scale. Here was this woman espousing anti-woman values. Her own daughter, who was as bright as hell, could have gone to Stanford like her brother, but didn't. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have read the part above that. The emphasis in that household was always on the sons. It was a man's world, and John and Mary Schmitz made no bones about it, and the fact that they wanted to keep it that way. When the Equal Rights Amendment died, Mary Schmitz had a cardboard tombstone put up in her front yard as a cheeky reminder of her greatest achievement. That Equal Rights Amendment, I don't think they were concerned about the white woman, white man dynamic. I think it's possible that maybe Mary Schmitz was more concerned that non-white people would think they were equal with white people. I think that's a big probability. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Much obliged, Lauren. Yes, Jeffrey Dahmer's father, Lionel, was a chemist. And yes, we have read many, many books. That would be another one, Lionel Dahmer, his memoir, where there have been distant, detached white mothers for a variety of reasons, but at the end of the day, they are not, get that shit, I don't do no nursing, I don't do no burping, I don't do no diapers, and, get mammy or nanny or, I don't do no. We've read a whole bunch of books where that has been displayed. Now, I will pause. She said, give us one with a nurturing white mother. I got to go way back in the archives because we are the biography kings. Dreams from My Father, Obeezy. His dad wasn't even there, right? That's why it's dreams. So that might be one, maybe. That is like way back. I think that was like the third book we read, fourth, third, 2000. That is way back, first year of the cow's existence. But that might be the only one that I can think of that might slightly, I guess it would depend. That is putting a whole lot on Obama's white mama. How nurturing and caring was she with young obesers as they're going around the world, Indonesia and all the rest of it? How that is putting a lot of weight on Obama's anyway, and his racist white grand. Oh man, she kind of that's putting a lot on Obeezy's white mama. How nurturing was she? In the archives. That's it. As for the timing of when this whole debaucherous episode in the van took place, now they were a little circuitous, but I thought some of this was for context. Now they said when all this is going down at the beach, they said that the evening is dead. It is almost always resuscitated around 1 a.m. So that right there lets us know this is late at night. Technically, this is morning, but this is late at. What are you doing out here with a 12-year-old at 1:30, whatever, in the morning? Come on. And I did crack up. I think I'd highlighted it myself, but man, when Lauren went back over the session where Officer Shields, I think the way he says it is, it didn't seem dangerous, whatever was happening here at 1:30 in the morning, but it seemed way more interesting than what was happening back over at the condos. Come on. That mighty, what that fool say? White people do not care about children. I'm going to get my popcorn. It's like watching Real Housewives of Seattle. Hey, man, what they doing? She got them good-looking legs and everything. What's getting kind of raunchy? Hey, check. Hey. What? He's 12. What did he say at the beginning? A woman and a boy. It might actually be dangerous because it is kind of late. And what, is he going to go to school? Like what? Come on. That exactly what Lauren just said. Now, if this had been Leroy, Lakeisha, and they had a 12-year-old blonde girl or boy, this isn't dangerous? At 1:30, are they going to go to school after all this in the morning? Let's see. We'll do one email. We'll nab other folks who dialed in with commentary. Let's see. Email number 1. Hi, Gus and Cal's audience. If you were in any doubt that white people are okay with pedophilia and more generally do not care about children, then the title of this book and the endorsements should set you straight. No mention of the victim, who this book should have been dedicated to, along with the proceeds, not June Rose Wolfe. I haven't read the book, but the first couple of pages read like an advertisement for child abuse. 2. Blonde-haired, light-complected, Rich Nybush was a favorite of Shields, the kind of officer that he aspired to be, direct, professional, and even keeled. Aryan. Sound like my black Mark Furman. 3. Mary Kay is in the back of her van and is discovered by police raping the non-white child, Vili, and is able to coolly, calmly lie about her reasons for being out with him late at night and with hardly any clothes on. What does it mean to be white? I swear, didn't I hear this before? Like, just stay with me. So, a blonde white person late at night with a half-naked child, and the police come and say something is odd about this. I say, hey. I know, officers, you are just doing your job, but this little fella here, who happens to be non-white, this little fella here is cool. Everything is fine. He's of age, 18. We're just two adults. We're having a good time. Everything's fine. Calm down. I'll take care of him. Leave everything alone. I said, well, okay. And they leave. Like, haven't you heard? Now, one time that I heard this, the blonde white person ate the child and killed them. I just left where that happened at. That's where these folks met at. I just went by Marquette every day. Milwaukee is really tiny and dangerous. This time, they leave and allow the blonde white person to continue raping the child. I guess she could have ate him too. They did say they thought it was fellatio happening. Woo! What does it mean to be white? Indeed. 4. The woman was very pretty. Even years later, Shields said he remembered thinking, boy, she's got some great legs. Again, suspects she was raping a child and is sexually admiring her. Again, what does it mean to be white? It's hard. It would be hard for me to imagine under any circumstance, like if this is Leroy or Lakeisha, and this is a 12-year-old white child, so this is Leroy. Wow, I know he shouldn't be here with this little 12-year-old white girl, but whoo, Leroy got some shoulders. Like, man, he has been in the gym and eating right. Whoo, boy, I am envious. Look at Leroy. Or Lakeisha. Come on. Number 5, he wondered if she was being held captive by the boy or perhaps if he was being held against his will. I don't believe what I'm reading. Would he have thought Vili was holding Mary Kay captive if he was a 12 or 13-year-old in the same situation? 6, Suna Fualaau instructed the police officer to leave Mary Kay Letourneau in charge of her son. She feels completely comfortable and she trusts Mary, and that they could release the boy back to her custody. This leaves me feeling physically sick. I actually want to cry. I guess we'll find out how the white child rapist manipulated Vili's mother into believing she's a white savior. Now, I would be interested to know, like, what, and I think Lauren just touched on some of this. She's at the pie factory working in White Center. The name does not mean like Whitefish Bay. Yes, the name means what it said. White Center? No, not at all. Not even close. Lots of the further south you go from Seattle, the more non-white people you bump into. White Center is south of Seattle. White Center is very close to the airport, but lots of non-white people live there. I'm not surprised that you would have Vili's mom working in a pie factory in white center. That not surprising at all. Anyway, but I think Lauren touched on that eloquently in talking about she might not have even been able to leave. Like, maybe she gets fired. Like, what? You gonna leave to go check on what? Well, you better find a new job tomorrow. It could have totally been that sort of situation. I was also saying, I have no idea, all this talk that they got now about so-called ICE and all that, who knows? Does she have valid paperwork and all the rest of it? Is she first generation? How long has she been here? How good is her English? I mean, it's a long list of, oh man, vulnerable. This is what I mean. Like, so, okay, Vili's not black. Does that mean this is not white supremacy racism? What? What? Even that right there, to pick somebody so vulnerable. If she had picked even some poor white people, like, oh man, I got enough sense and understanding of English to know, what the hell? What? Why are you with my child out at the beach at 1 o'clock in the morning? What? Come on. Number 8. What's being said here? She was the most beautiful of the children and by far the most devoted to John. She was the one who sat beaming like Nancy Reagan, gazing at Ronnie whenever her father spoke. Randy Smith, a Schmidt's political aide, in a 1998 LA Times interview. Nancy Reagan was married to former President Ronald Reagan, so I don't understand the reference to her father speaking. It suggests incest, or am I going mad? I thought the same thing, because I was thinking, like, did they have a daughter named Nancy? Because I thought Nancy was married to Ronald Reagan. So the metaphor that's being chosen, you're picking someone that was sexually involved, married to this dude. Like, so she was looking at him like they're married? Like, oh, that's my adoring husband, and I'm so, what? That's how a child is looking? What? What? Is this some sort of Oedipus Rex, or I don't know what the female version of that is, but what? White culture. And some of this we got to keep reading, just keep reading, just keep reading, just keep reading. No, you are not going mad. So I guess that was a question. You are not going mad. I thought the exact same thing. 9. Indeed, prayer was an important ritual at the Schmidt's home. Life revolved around the church, the religion of white supremacy. Does it mean something that this is the Catholic Church? Does that, we talked about the religion of raping children and 10. In time, the family would get a German shepherd that John named Kaiser. White dog. 2 times. That is email number 1. Untiljustice@gmail.com. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Retired firefighter should be with us as well. Let's see.
Greetings, everyone. I didn't think it was going to start off like a autobiography, but anyway, I think I remember about this incident, but I wouldn't know whether or not it was an act of racism, white supremacy, because I didn't know what the racial classification of the student/child. I didn't know whether or not it was white or non-white at the time. But I do think I recall it happening back in the 1990s, I think, something like that. At the beginning, they were describing on how how law enforcement lurches around clubs at a certain time because they know that the effect of the liquor would be prime for harassing people and even arresting people also. That is something that I followed during my clubbing days, and also they still do it now, in and around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, stuff like that. The due process of asking questions until the defendant stumbles with the answers. That's a practice by law enforcement. Some are better than others into doing that. And I think if that was a non-white black male or black female, they in a lot of cases would have broken down because they would have either panicked or got angry, and from there would have been an arrest. But white women are very slick, very coy at what they do, and they would even cut anger, about what they're doing in a play action type of burst of anger that would throw a white male law enforcement officer off course, and all right, okay, y'all can go, that sort of thing. That's what I figured with her as a white female. I noticed that John J. Smith was getting a lot of darkness, quote unquote, compliments early in the book in itself. The organization John Birch Society came up, and first thing came to my mind. It still is a question in my mind, but I know he was a part of something similar. John Wayne, movie star John Wayne. I think he was a member of the John Birch Society. I could be wrong though, but I think he was a member. With a child that young, it only takes seconds. It only takes seconds for that child to effectively drown. But CPR has more of a chance to be successful with the younger you are. If you've been underwater for minutes, we would still perform CPR on a child more so than an adult. I forgot what reasons on why, but it's some kind of policy that takes place with that. And I was just thinking, here it goes, saying something that happened long ago affects a white woman, and in her case, raping behavior as a teacher. That normally comes up, the reason why I was doing that because of something took place with me, the years ago and whatnot. But I would say losing a sibling can affect you emotionally, psychologically. It can affect you, but it's probably taken a little bit too far from what she was doing. Last but not least, the name Rose Kennedy came up, and first thing come to my mind was she was the mother of one of the most popular and dastardly Irish Catholic families in the world. And that's all I have to report on.
You better watch your tongue now. Abraham Bolden loved him some Kennedys, and he is still with us, so he ain't going to tolerate too much bad-mouthing of the Kennedy patriarch. Much obliged. Retired firefighter in Florida. I did think he would slip in a necessary, important PSA about swim safety, especially if you have a pool, and even if you don't have a pool, because there have been so many cases of even people who they are neighbors with someone who has a pool, and their child goes over to the neighbor's house and drowns, that type of thing, or maybe sneaks, or maybe they even have permission, they're friends and everything, so the neighbor doesn't care, if they come over and go swimming, and they go over one time and whoops, and end up drowning, that sort of thing. It's been so many of those, especially black children. As he just stated, it does not take very long at all. Like they said in the book, really, I mean, it can, what, it might not be no splashing, exactly like they said, like, it can be super quick. So If you have children, if you have a pool, oh man, like maximum safety. If you have a pool and younger children, and even if you don't have a pool or hot tub or whatever the case may be, bathtub even really, but if your neighbors have a pool, that's one constructive reason to speak to your neighbors right there, to make sure that we are all codified up. You can let them know that you have a young child, so make sure that they have pool safety. Oh, young child, so we'll make sure that, we got cover for the pool and monitor for the pool and all that. They got electric monitors and all that sort of thing now, and all that. Right. Children in the neighborhood, pool safety. Be serious about that, because it can be, I think O.J. Simpson lost a child to a pool drowning as well, tragically, way before, since we had O.J. Simpson mentioned in the book, way before we got to all that. But matter of fact, I think that was when he was married first time around with a black female. But yeah, pool, swim, safety, especially now that we're getting to the summer time. Quickly get to some of my notes, and then we'll get other emails and commentary as well. Let's see. So this book is dedicated not to Vili and other victims of child rape. It is dedicated to June Rose Wolfe. We'll investigate. Let's see. I also thought it was important to just make it plain. This is about a woman and a boy. And I think it's even more important. This is about a white woman and a non-white boy. That's what this is about. Let's see. David Shields having his grandmother and a close high school friend die in accidents caused by drunk drivers. Sobriety would be best. Let's see. And they even continue with that that's how we know what time all this took place. They say after 1 a.m., that's when we know it's going to pick up, because the bars start to emptying out and folks want to continue their evening and get rowdy, and you go down to the tavern. Now you got to have a brawl. They know all about that in Milwaukee. But that's when all this happens. So they go and figure out, what is Mary Kay up to at 1:30 in the morning? Indeed. Let's see. All the blonde-haired... we already heard that about Rich Niebush, one of the officers that first arrives on the scene to check out all of this. Let's see. The blonde woman offered no answers. Even that, if I'm a police officer and I'm trained in the art of, we ask questions. We evaluate those answers. If things are not adding up, hey, we might have to detain you or whatever, and we better get some sensible answers to these questions. She's not even she's lying in some instances, right? She says 18, like that right there, like what? That should be all kinds of handcuffs immediately. Like what? He says what? 18? I look at Vili. 18? I look at Vili. Yeah, give me the cuffs. Give me the like you up. I don't know what you're up to, but you up to, and look at what time. Yeah, buddy. Go on and cuff him up. Yeah, she do have some good legs, but go on and cuff him up. Put him in the back seat of the car, and we'll get to all this later. But yeah, you talking about 8, yeah, man, you're lying to, isn't that crime right there? You out here lying, obstructing justice at 1:30 in the morning? Ought to be shamed. Disgrace. Let's see. And then not answering questions directly. I've seen that myself. You go out there and have Mark Furman get to asking you questions and you don't want to answer. Especially late at night. You got you under suspicious circumstances. Let's see. Now, even this, they said the sergeant asked Mary Kay what she was wearing. His flashlight washed over her to reveal a layering of 4 T-shirts and a beige skirt. She had on a thin jacket, no socks, and sandals. Later, officers would differ on what the woman had on that night. Nybush thought she was only wearing a T-shirt. I did not notice a skirt, he wrote later in his report. Now, I think that's important for a number of reasons. Now, this is trained officers. Either you could take it they were practicing racism and caping for this child-raping white woman, or maybe they made a mistake. I mean, it's notorious people, You give them a glance, quick look, especially nighttime. Now, maybe they made a mistake, although that seems like a lot. Like, did she have on a T-shirt and nothing else? Or is she wearing 4 T-shirts, a skirt, and sandals? Like, that is like a gargantuan difference. And now, hopefully we have body cameras, so we can skip through all of that. That's another one, like, I wouldn't care what she had to say. Once I look, you're how old? And the child says 14, and I got eyeballs, and even that, the racism we know, you should know, they got moldy old studies talking about how white people see a child, like with Jeff Dahmer. They see a child, and if it's non-white, they'll say, oh, I think this is about a 40-year-old right here, and then turn out, oh, man, I thought he was 40. Oh, man, he's only 11. Dang. That sort of thing, and to that child's detriment. That sort of thing has been happening like forever, all the way back to slave times. So, oof. You got a lot of things working against Vili in this situation, but if you see a white person period, in their 30s with a 14-year-old and all they're wearing is a shirt and no bottom, that should be and it's 1:30 in the morning. Y'all look like y'all in bed to get handcuffs right there. Hey, we'll suss all this out at the station. You're going downtown. Yeah, you're going downtown. Let's see. And then all that, the woman was very pretty. Even years later, she said, boy, she got them great legs. He said the kid's like only 12 or 13 years old, he said, his voice trailing off, and I think he was putting his clothes back on. Click, cuffs right there. If this was Lakeisha, Leroy, you're going to be handcuffed right there. You're going to need to get Johnny Cochran right now. Only a pretty white woman. I can't even say that because Jeff Dahmer, I don't think is very attractive. And I never heard anybody say he has great legs, but he pulled off the exact same thing. Really, Mary Kay, she pulled off the Jeff Dahmer. Get caught with a child at 1 o'clock in the morning. You up to no good? No, I'm not. I'm chilling. I'm good. Well, I guess you good. All right, we'll leave you to it. Like, whoa, that's the Jeff Dahmer special. They might even help you escort you back to the crib and everything. Come on. Let's see. The whole thing seemed fishy, but our hands were tied. What do you mean your hands were? Did somebody come with a rope? Did Mary Kay, she had a lasso in the back? You're not going to call this in, buddy. What are you talking about? I'm still trying to process. She flagrantly lied. 18 years old, by one estimation, she had on nothing but a T-shirt. It looked like they were putting their clothes back on. Why isn't that grounds for an arrest? It's 1:30 in the morning. You got a minor. Why isn't that grounds for an arrest? I don't understand. That's what it means to be white. I strongly suspect if this had been a white child, she would have been arrested. They might not have even, they would have, maybe, I think the correct procedure, they would have arrested her first and then called the parents. What do you think about this? We arrested because this seems so super fishy and, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. It might have even been out of her hands to a degree, like how fishy we think all this is. Like, or we might even see if you're culpable. Like, did you allow this? Are you negligent in your parenting? You might have to come down and answer some. It would not have worked out this situation at all if this had been a white child. At all. Let's see. The sergeant told Vili's mother what had transpired that night. She was unconcerned and asked to speak with the pair. After both spoke to her, Neely Fualaau instructed the police officer to leave Mary Kay Letourneau in charge of her son. That right there, too, is the power of a white woman. I mean, I don't know how long she's been in this country, Vili's mom, but that white woman, who even knows what she could have said to her on the phone? I'll call ICE on you. Your green card up to date? Who knows what she said? Like, who knows? You still want that weekly supply of groceries I hook you all up with? Who knows what who knows what sort of so-called tragic and trashy arrangement that she's had with this family who I suspect is super vulnerable here in White Center. Again, that's not like, Clanville or nothing. But who knows? They're working at the pie factory. That's not no great job. And that pie factory is out of business. So let's see. So the mom, Vili's mom, she says she felt completely comfortable with him being with her, Mary Kay, and she trusts Mary and that they could release the boy back to her custody. That's just the system of white supremacy racism. It reminds me of Renethia Tate, where she wrote in the book, she said, hey, because of the vulnerability of the system of white supremacy, non-white people are often in positions where we are afraid to say no. Do not put my child back in that white predator's hands. We often, we just got to go there. I can't lose Lauren said, I might not even be able to leave the pie factory to come out here and check on this myself because I could lose my job. I can't say no. Let's see. Man, this isn't even, you got ice outside, so if I do leave the pie factory, maybe ice is outside to get me too. Hope white people come and protest for me. Let's see. I did catch that they met in Milwaukee. This is Mary Kay's parents. This is back when they had white people in Milwaukee and didn't have black people. Let's see. Get the drowning. Other than more blonde hair, blonde child. Everyone loves a blonde child. I did notice a retired firefighter pointed out that there was lots of, for her, white father, John Schmitz. He gets all of this praise, as what Dr. Welsing say, the tall, dark, and handsome. Again, we got to keep reading for what is John Schmitz all about. Let's see. Curtailing sex education. Now we got all this rampant syphilis and sexually transmitted infections, but hey, we don't want to talk about no sex education in school. Or now, if we're gonna talk about it, everybody's got to be into anti-sex and LGBTQI and all the rest of it. We got all the syphilis. We'll get to that later, maybe. Let's see. He said that Mary Kay was so smart. She could have gone to Stanford and been great just like a white man, but they doted on the dudes in her family. Stanford has accepted white women since like forever. You know who they've not had tons of? Negras. Like Cory Booker, Stanford alumnus, but they ain't got no long tradition of having lots of negras at Stanford. They got a legacy of eugenics. In fact, Stanford can brag about being co-ed, so Mary Kay not going to Stanford is not because of no sexism. That's just their family dynamics of, whatever they chose, whatever they wanted in terms of the system of white supremacy racism. But Stanford ain't got no problem with the admission of white women, darlings of affirmative action. Step back. I saw lots of white women at Stanford while I was there. They helped me at the library every day. Let's see. We got O.J. Simpson mentioned in the book. This book was published much closer to when all that happened. And in 97, it was just 2 years removed from the O.J. Simpson trial. So I guess obligatory mention. Let's see. When they mention a lot of the areas that they're talking about, this is not like Seattle proper, like Des Moines and Tukwila and all these areas. This is like the suburbs, and I don't even think that Kent. I don't even think these are like suburbs. These are the like White Center. These are areas that are like 10 miles, 15 miles outside of Seattle. Some of them are like sizable towns. Like I think Kent is close to 100,000 people. That's closer to Seattle, but I don't really consider some of these areas like Seattle suburbs. They're just areas that are somewhat close to Seattle, you can get to without too much difficulty. But that portion, bleached white condominiums and gated communities of pink stucco, and had obliterated much of the visual beauty of raw landscape. There had been a time when hawks circled and coyotes sometimes made it down where the houses lined up in glistening rows on Spyglass Hill. All of that is accurate. Racially restricted regions where you don't have lots of so-called diversity there. For sure. Let's see. Mary Kay's mom not being vested in parenting. Like we said, we've heard a lot of this before. The child molestation, we've heard a lot of this before. Dare I even say white people don't care about children again. Let's see. And even, and this is, I'm not making excuses for Mary Kay or anything, but just, Mary Kay would later describe Michelle's recollections about the childhood abuse as an exaggeration and dismiss the sexual abuse as nothing more than fondling. I don't even feel I was violated, not my body. I was forced into anything. I was not forced into anything, but when I decided it was wrong, I said no, and guess what? It stopped. Just in my opinion, they do have a lot of research. People that have been abused as a child, they can perpetuate a lot of that behavior. And just the minimizing of child rape. I was not sexually, it's an exaggeration. It was nothing more than fondling. That is a criminal act and would be child rape as well, even so-called fondling. Not that that excuses it, and we're not doing no switch around. You are a convicted child rapist, Mary Kay. Get on out of here. Let's see. More blonde, and let's see. All this doting in the mirror. We talked about some of that even seeming very much the same sort of obsessive components that we've talked about with white personality, and that especially being focused on the blonde beauty and attractiveness that gets promoted, characteristics that are associated with albinism, and what is stereotypically associated with white, and that becoming a whole empire of focus and worship. Even reminded me of John Benet Ramsey doing all the beauty pageants, and got to spend 15 hours getting my hair straight to go out and be perfect as a white woman. Let's see. And she says there were times when Michelle wanted to take a baseball bat to Mary Kay's head to put her out of her misery for standing in front of the mirror. I even thought of that, like, wow, the homicidal nature of white supremacy racism. I generally do not think about even non-white people that pluck my nerves getting a baseball bat. I mean, you kill somebody, like cracking them upside the head with a base. And I mean, what a way to go. Like, wow, it gets on my nerves that much, you standing in front of the mirror, that I want to get a baseball bat and dent your skull. That's why Fuller say, do all that hanging out. And they might have a baseball bat right next to the refrigerator, and we do name calling and gossiping, and we just constructive activities. We will resume chapter 4. If you have additional thoughts, observations, make notes. We'll have ample time to share. Katherine Massey Book Club back. Gregg Olsen's If Loving You Is Wrong, that L word. Audio segment number 2.
Chapter 4. Mary Kay Schmitz and Michelle Reinhardt were two hot girls, and they knew it. They had it all. Any guy, any boyfriend. They had yacht clubs and champagne. They had trips to Palm Springs, Catalina, and Mexico. They partied with the heirs to the May Company and Heinz ketchup fortunes. Although the two best friends never attended the same schools, they were inseparable. Mary Kay went to St. John the Baptist in Costa Mesa and the Roman Catholic prep Cornelia Connolly School in Anaheim. Michelle attended Our Lady Queen of Angels and the local high school in Corona del Mar. At Cornelia Connolly, Mary Kay made her name by being on the varsity cheerleading squad for 3 years in a row. Cheerleaders from 3 Orange County Catholic girls' schools vied for spots on the squad that cheered for Servite, the boys' Catholic school. By her own estimation, Mary Kay was good at cheerleading, not only because she knew the routines, but because she actually followed the game. She was nominated at one point for a spot on a national cheerleading team, but dropped the ball on the paperwork and never got her rightful place on the team. Her high school grades, she later said, were as good as she wanted them to be. The classes weren't easy, and she gave just enough to keep her grades halfway decent. She had other priorities. "We just played," Michelle said years later. "That's all we did. We just had a great time. We didn't care much about school. We didn't have to." In fact, Southern California was made for girls who looked like Mary Kay and Michelle. Beautiful girls who could put on a pair of shorts over a swimsuit and slip into sandals and look like $1,000,000. In cars with the top down, hair tousled by the warm, moist air of the ocean, they were girls who could catch all the looks that came their way. Michelle had blonde hair, fine features, and gray-blue eyes. She looked like Mary Kay's sister. Many thought so. And if Mary Kay, with her feathered Farrah Fawcett hairdo, was a good Catholic schoolgirl by day, she was a completely different sort when she stashed her cheerleading skirt and pom-poms. "She never had any books, never did any homework that I ever saw," said a friend of Mary Kay's. Mary Kay liked to party, and she liked boys. And with a few exceptions, boyfriends didn't last long. Even so, they were kept on a string of steel and shoved aside when something better came along. Something better was someone cuter or richer. Moving on was easy. A broken heart was the price of admission. As far as Michelle could determine, those were talents Mary Kay honed to perfection. We knew the power we had over men, and we were very aware of it, and we used it, Michelle recalled of their high school days. Sometimes the pair got in the car and just headed south, where they'd end up partying for the weekend in Mexico. Ensenada was a favorite destination. So was Catalina Island. The two best friends were lovely and blonde, and that meant they didn't need money. Guys were always willing to shell out for a pretty girl. It didn't matter that they were high school students or supposedly had a curfew. Mary Kay didn't seem to worry about much beyond having a good time. While others might have been concerned about their schoolwork or their jobs, Mary Kay focused on her hair and getting to the next party to meet the next guy. There were no obstacles. She was invincible. It was never too late, too far, too expensive. She lived for the moment. Mary Kay always liked to live on the edge and do dangerous things, Michelle said later. During that period, Mary Kay held a succession of jobs, working the counter at the Snack Shack in Corona del Mar or hostessing and waitressing at restaurants Casa Maria, Gulliver's, or the Good Earth. At most of these jobs, Michelle worked alongside Mary Kay. When it was time to quit for greener pastures, or because they couldn't get the time off they needed to party, they quit together. They were then, as they always imagined, friends forever. Greek Row at the University of Southern California campus was only a short drive from Corona del Mar, and it became a magnet for Mary Kay and Michelle. When they were 16, the pair was on campus every week, partying. Sometimes things got out of hand. On one occasion, a friend of Michelle's told her that Mary Kay's party girl antics got her mentioned in the Row Run, the newspaper for fraternity boys and sorority girls. It was just well known that she was the girl to party with. For a good time, call Mary Kay. It's sad. I don't know that my reputation was much better, but I never read about myself in the Row Run, that's for sure. Michelle worried about Mary Kay when she went out to party. It seemed Mary Kay lived to tally the number of boyfriends she had. She measured her worth by how many guys had wanted her. Popularity was everything. She made the same mistakes over and over, and if she had been looking for love, it was like the words of the country song. She was looking for love in all the wrong places. There were some very traumatic things that happened in her high school and college years, Michelle said later. The promiscuity is a classic symptom of somebody who has been molested. She was sexually used by men she dated, too. She was physically hurt. I know that she was. And as much as she keeps denying it by saying that it doesn't matter, I know it does. Mary Kay had an on-and-off-again boyfriend during much of her teen years, but Michelle never considered that relationship exclusive or really that important. Mary Kay seemed to feed off the guy's adulation. It was almost as if he were starstruck by the girl from Spyglass Hill, and she liked that aspect more than she liked him. The relationship was based on how he viewed her. We had way more power than we should have had. We basically did what we wanted to do. Our life was basically whatever we wanted it to be. We worked when we wanted to work, where we wanted to work. We played where we wanted to play and when we wanted to play, recalled Michelle. When Mary Kay was 17, her mother pushed her into running for Miss Newport Beach, even though she wasn't old enough to enter. The headstrong eldest Schmidt's daughter thought the whole thing was a big joke, almost an embarrassment. But she did what she was asked, for the good of the family name. It turned out later that the joke was on John and Mary Schmidt's. Mary Kay told Michelle that a man associated with the pageant was doing everything he could to get into her pants. He was a dog, Michelle said of the man. It would have been really fun to see how her parents would have reacted if they could see what he was all about. Mary Kay didn't win, but one of the sponsors told her that she placed in the top 5. The response was classic Mary Schmidt's. Jerry Schmidt's announced he was getting married to another Scientologist, and his ultra-Catholic mother refused to support the wedding with her attendance. That also meant none of her children or her husband could attend. Mary Kay was the only one to break ranks. She loved her brother, and no matter what her mother said, she was going to be at the wedding in San Francisco. She and Michelle drove north in the Schmidt's family's Oldsmobile. The engine blew in Bakersfield. The teenage girls had no money, nowhere to stay. Mary Kay called her father, and he said he'd drive up and trade cars in the morning. He still wouldn't go to the wedding. Mary Schmidt's had laid down the law. The girls ended up talking a trucker out of his truck for the night, and they curled up in the cab. She gets herself into trouble. She manages to weasel out of it, no matter what happens, Michelle said later. Years later, when the world would hear of their classmate, a small group of women from Cornelia Connolly gathered after the connection was made between Mary Kay Letourneau and Mary Kay Schmidt's. One, who knew her from the Catholic school in Anaheim, had never considered the former classmate a mental giant, calling her simple-minded. It was an opinion that held up when they met again, when Mary Kay was grown and the mother of 4. She was a sad, tragic figure. The former classmate wondered if she was a victim of her childhood. She never really got the love she needed, a friend recalled. Chapter 5. KNBC, the Los Angeles NBC affiliate, had a locally produced issues show that was not only a ratings winner, it provided fodder for water-cooler commentary. Among the panelists were Mary Schmidt's, lawyer Gloria Allred, and the president of the United Teachers of Los Angeles, Hank Springer. Free for All, with its roundtable format, was taped on Friday nights and aired on Saturday afternoons. It was at the height of its popularity in the mid to late 1970s. Sometimes after the taping, Mary Schmidt's would join the others for a drink or a meal at a Mexican restaurant off Olive in Burbank. Hank Springer was surprised that Mary would go out with them. She seemed so uptight on the show. A fucking right-wing cunt, Hank thought at first. But somehow Mary Schmidt's, to the right of Attila the Hun, and Hank Springer, to the left of Jane Fonda, developed respect and a friendship. Mary Schmidt's was elegant, he said later when he thought of the wife of the California state senator. Very beautifully dressed, never a hair out of place. I wouldn't call her strident, but next to strident. She didn't let her hair down much. On camera, she was very, very professional. And predictable, too. Almost like she was a cookie cutter, Hank said of her on-camera persona and her defense of her causes, the anti-ERA, anti-abortion movements. You stamp her out like a Stepford wife. Hank Springer found things to like about Mary Schmidt's outside of her politics, which he loathed. But he found little tolerance for her husband. Mary was alone a lot during those years. Her husband was in Sacramento most of the week. If Mary could relax a little and be a person, John Schmidt's could not. At least, Hank didn't think so. Once in a great while, John, always on, always in a suit and tie, would join the group after the tapings. A very uptight man, so self-righteous. He believes in his ideas so virulently. To me, it's a virus. Horribly negative, homophobic, anti-union, anti-abortion. Everything that had to do with people, he was against it. His homophobia was almost off the Richter scale, Hank recalled later. Mary Schmitz worked the same political agenda. Although she never held an elected office, she was named to a number of panels and committees and carried considerable clout. She was always at the ready to present her views. Sometimes getting the message out was all that seemed to matter. One night, Lois Lundberg, Orange County Republican Party chairwoman, invited Mary Schmitz to speak at a meeting. Mary was highly regarded as a knowledgeable speaker, articulate and quick, though sometimes her critics felt she would go off on a tangent. She was a good speaker, though not as humorous or as warm as John Schmitz. The same night, the party secretary informed Lois that a local brownie troupe would be attending. Later, Lois wished she would have asked Mary Schmitz the topic of her talk. As the little fresh faces of the brownies looked on, Mary proceeded with a graphic discussion against abortion. A frantic Lois tried to get the speaker to modulate her message, or even better, to get her off the stage. But Mary Schmitz wouldn't budge. She was there for the night. She gave a long and detailed speech, talking about every form of abortion. The vacuum cleaner was the one where I had a heart attack. I was hopeful the kids were small enough that they didn't know what she was talking about. Los Angeles lawyer Gloria Allred not only worked alongside Mary Schmitz on the weekly television show, she worked tirelessly in support of feminist and human rights causes. That meant she was in frequent and direct opposition to John Schmitz and his right-wing agenda. Whether stumping on television's Merv Griffin show or presenting Schmitz with a chastity belt when she fought him on pro-choice issues, she was a woman of undeniable power. John Schmitz knew it, and, as some would later suggest, it irritated him. He joked about her surname, All Red. In December of 1981, State Senator Schmitz issued a press release entitled Attack of the Bull Dykes. The release described an audience of pro-choice supporters as a sea of hard, Jewish, and arguably female faces. He called Gloria Allred a slick, butch lawyeress. His comments touched off a firestorm of publicity that culminated in his being stripped of committee chairmanships and receiving the censure of the Republican Party. Gloria Allred filed a $10 million libel suit that would fester for years. Throughout the publicity, Mary Kay stood up for her father like no one else in the family. One time, at lunch with a boyfriend at the Good Earth restaurant, Mary Kay overheard a party at an adjacent table engaged in a lively and very nasty debate about her father and the Allred fracas. It was too much for her to bear. Later, she recalled how she stood up and walked over to the group. "You don't have all the facts," she told them. "You are talking about John Schmitz and his character in such personal terms, and you don't even know him. I know him. He's my father." The diners set their forks down and looked embarrassed. "You're right," one said. "We don't know him." "Yes," she said before turning away, "and you attacked his character." The charges of anti-Semitism were fueled by demonstrations staged by members of the Jewish Defense League in front of the Schmitz home on Spyglass Hill. As always, Mary Kay, then a 19-year-old student at Orange Coast College living at home, backed her father to the hilt. Later, some would insist, blindly so. And if her brothers and sisters were less demonstrative in their devotion, she didn't care. She and her father had a special relationship. She went upstairs and cranked up the stereo, releasing ear-splitting German marching music from an open window. That'll teach them. Cake didn't like anyone messing with her father. Chapter 6. Carla Vern Bostrom Stuckle's home in Tustin was on a quiet street, nearly out of earshot of the ocean waves of sound that is the Garden Grove-Santa Ana freeway that snakes past her subdivision. It was a California ranch-style house with a pool in the backyard that featured a little waterfall. Inside, over a brown linoleum floor, a white couch with red pillows and a piano dominated their respective corners of the house. Carla Stuckle had a library overflowing with books by Taylor Caldwell and Stephen King. She also had a secret. For years she had been carrying on with a married man, a very important, very married man. At one time, the Swedish-born Karla Stuckel had been a beautiful woman, but diabetes, too much work, and poor judgment cost her youth before her time. She had botched 2 marriages by the time she found herself in the glare of the spotlight. Her first, to a Marine officer, ended in divorce when the husband returned from a tour of duty to learn from his daughters that their mother had been sharing a bedroom with Uncle Pete. Their father raised her 2 little girls, the oldest named Karla for her mother, born in 1959, and Amy 2 years later. "My mother was the kind of woman who couldn't be without companionship," said Karla Larson, Karla Stuckel's daughter, many years later. "So she got kind of wild. I don't know if it was the times. There were lots of men in the house. My aunt told me she did drugs, but I don't know. My father never confirmed that." By 1966, their mother was in California, chasing after Uncle Pete and starting over. The 2 little girls would grow up with scarcely any contact with their mother over the years. Neither really knew if their mother, who took a job at the Marine base in El Toro, missed them. The only gift they ever received for birthdays or Christmas was a pair of Hollywood star nighties and gold plastic high-heeled shoes. That was the first year their mother was gone. A dozen years and 1,000 tears later, with only sporadic contact, Karla Larson got a call from her mother. The abandoned daughter had graduated from high school by then and was living in a trailer in Tucson and working as a bookkeeper for a tire store. Her younger sister, Amy, was at a convent school in Indiana. Their mother wanted to reconnect. There were apologies and promises of a better relationship. Not long after that, Karla Larson bought a 1964 station wagon for $200 and drove west. There was someone her mother wanted her to meet. It was the late 1970s. Karla Stuckel insisted that her daughter should meet John Schmitz, her good friend and former community college instructor. She indicated that she and the well-known politician shared ideology and commitment to the conservative cause. Karla Stuckel simply told her eldest daughter that it would be a good idea for the 2 to get together, and, if she was interested, she could enroll in one of his political science classes someday. Karla Larson had no idea what had been going on, though later she gathered from things her mother told her that she and John Schmitz had been involved for quite some time. An early clue was the ringing of the telephone. Sometimes the phone would ring, and it would only ring once, and my mother would say, "Don't answer it. Don't ever answer the phone unless it rings more than once or twice," Karla Larson recalled many years later. It was only after things were more out in the open between the politician and his favorite campaign worker that her mother told her what the single rings meant to her. It was his code to let her know that he was thinking of her when he couldn't talk, like when he was at home. It worked. But I was really annoyed by it. She knew that it was him. He told her that when he couldn't talk, he'd let her know, she said. Karla Larson told her mother that she objected because John had a family and a wife. "My mother never cared if anyone was married or not. Not a big issue with her," she said. John Schmitz often visited Karla Stuckel's home on Drayton Way in Tustin. So often that Karla Larson's suspicions increased. He spent so much time with her mother, something had to be going on. The young woman noticed how they talked to each other in ways that seemed more intimate than a mere friendship. The suspicions were confirmed one afternoon when she arrived home and went inside her mother's bedroom to find her in bed with the state senator. "My mother told me that they weren't having sex. They just liked to lie there naked together," she remembered later. Karla told her daughter how she had become involved in politics, mostly behind the scenes, though she did make a losing bid for a seat on the Tustin School Board. She was one of John Schmitz's most ardent supporters and considered him of tremendous intellect and ability. She invited her daughter to get involved in John's latest campaign, and she agreed. She stuffed envelopes, made phone calls, ran errands, and watched her mother get closer and closer to her candidate. Young Karla liked Schmitz, but she knew that politics was a sham. His brochure showed pictures of his wife and children, and yet he was sleeping with Karla's mother. "It all just confirmed my belief that all politicians were liars," she said. Carla Stuckle had a dream, a plan. She was going to be Mrs. John G. Schmitz because she had a right to be. She saw herself as smarter, more beautiful, and certainly more of a political asset than Mary Schmitz. Once she had stolen the handsome, dark-eyed politician's heart, once she had him in her bed, she was determined to get the rest of him, all of him. She would not be denied what she had coveted. Her ego would not allow it. "My mother liked to be the center of attention," Carla Larson said many years later. "I think in her fantasy world, John was going to leave Mary for her, marry my mother, and she was going to be Mrs. Senator John Schmitz." Whenever the relationship seemed strained and Carla Stuckle thought she might be losing her lover, she did whatever she could to keep him. He would tell my mother, "I can't see you any more, Carla. We need to distance ourselves. That's where I belong, with my family. I'm not with my kids. I'm here with you. This is wrong." And she would manipulate him back into it. One time, Carla told her daughter that she swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills in a mock suicide attempt to keep John from leaving. She called the doctor right after she made the attempt. She wanted to keep John. She didn't intend to die. John Schmitz came back to her. He couldn't let go. There were numerous times when Carla Stuckle threatened to tell Mary Schmitz the truth. She threatened to expose him during the campaign. Her mother's tactics disgusted her daughter. As much as she wanted to love her, it turned her stomach to think that her mother could be so evil to the man she purportedly loved. She blackmailed him. She taped their phone conversations. She had one of those little suction cup things and a tape recorder. I saw her do it, and I listened to the tapes. Typical lovers' talk. "I miss you. I wish I was with you." Carla Larson considered John a victim of his own mistakes and of his involvement with her conniving mother. She saw how he had tried to break it off several times. Carla told her how John said he was violating his marital vows. He was putting his political future at great risk, but Carla wouldn't let him go. Carla also taunted John. She'd show up at the Catholic church in Costa Mesa where the Schmitz family celebrated Mass. She'd run into him at fundraisers and walk up to him and his wife simply to unnerve him. It was a kind of game for her, and maybe for him too. Maybe the risk of being found out was as exciting to him as it was to her. Carla Larson even joined her mother on a couple of visits to the Schmitz home on Spyglass Hill. The outside was beautiful, she thought, but the inside of the residence was cold. She saw how it matched her mother's description of John Schmitz's wife. It lacked any personality, charm. It lacked familiness. It was formal, cold, wintry, icy. Mary was a cold woman. Going there was extremely uncomfortable for Carla Larson. "I didn't want to betray my mother, and I liked John, but it didn't feel right. I wasn't comfortable being around Mary because I knew." Years later, when reporters would once again search the archives for tidbits about John Schmitz and his affair with Carla Stuckle, the daughter she left behind when she was just a little girl would consider once more if it had been a love affair or a convenience. At least on her mother's side, Carla Larson concluded, it hadn't been about love. She admired him, respected him, was drawn to his power. "I don't think my mother's capable of truly loving anyone. It is not in her nature. She's too selfish a person." It was the oldest trick in the book. Carla Stuckle became pregnant to hang on to her man. She gave birth to a son in June 1981. One afternoon at her home in Drayton Way, Carla Stuckle sucked on a more menthol and flatly stated to her daughter she had become pregnant on purpose. "To replace Philip," she said. Getting pregnant and having a son was something that Carla Stuckle wanted to do for John Schmitz. She told her daughter of how she had been visiting at the Schmitz's home in Corona del Mar when she passed out. "In the exact spot where Philip fell into the pool," she said. Carla Larson found her mother's story suspect. As she understood it, Mary Schmitz was inside, and Mary Kay and an older brother were in the water playing. No one had seen where the little one had gone in. Carla Stuckle told her daughter that if Mary Schmitz had been more mindful of her children, the little boy would never have drowned. John Schmitz's mistress also confided that she had had an amniocentesis performed during her pregnancy. She had done so not because she was concerned that giving birth in her 40s would have jeopardized her chances for a healthy baby. She did it because if it had been a girl, she would have aborted the baby. "It has to be a perfect boy," she said. She was giving him the son he lost. She chose the name John George Bostrom to irritate Mary Schmitz if she ever found out. John was not real thrilled that I put his name on the birth certificate, but I'm not going to lie, she told her daughter. "Birth certificates are public record, Mother." The older woman smoked and sighed. "Oh, well."
We will pick up there Chapter 7 for next week, If Loving You is Wrong. Katherine Massey Book Club, context of white supremacy, the number 720-716-7300, the code 564943 pound, press star 61 if you would like to participate. The email untiljustice@gmail.com. I asked that question, and we'll keep in mind throughout, especially if you remember this case, if you paid attention to it, when it was all unfolding in the late 90s and even being talked about over the last few decades. Did you hear people talk about this case as an example of racism, particularly white female teachers practicing racism? This is a part of that school to prison pipeline and all that. Did you hear people talk about this as a case of racism? In all the time that this case has been discussed, did you process and think about it? Yes, this is another manifestation of white supremacy racism. That white teacher practiced racism by picking a non-white child to rape, molest, all of it. Or was that really not a part of your thinking? And I have to say, hey, I can't say any of that, because for me it was Mary Kay what now? Who? Mary Kay what? Spell the last name. And now we can't even get to the racism or not racism. Who was off? Woo! Make sure I was not here in Seattle when all this happened, but still, study local events and pay attention to the news, because regardless, even if I'd been in like Alaska or Hawaii or Florida, I still should have known about Mary Kay Letourneau. Fuller was in D.C. and he was super informed about this case. Let's see. We'll get in one email and then we'll get folks who dialed in. Let us see. Email number 2. Greetings, Gus. Thankful that you made it back from Milwaukee. That makes 2 of us, at least. In addition to listening to your excellent programs, some of the best work from Milwaukee, I continued my own solo book club, reading texts from Moses Fleetwood Walker, the baseball player. Oh, yes, that's biography club. Judah Benjamin, the so-called Jew, who is considered the architect of the Confederacy, and Jefferson Davis's right-hand man, and Homer Plessy and the Plessy v. Ferguson Supreme Court case. Important installments in white supremacy. Prologue, June 19, 1996. 1. Des Moines, Washington, a suburb just south of Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The demographic of this town seems to be changing. 2000 census 74% white, 2020 census 47.15% white. Again, there's been lots of loss of black population from Seattle proper, and a lot of that has been drifting south. All of these locations, for the most part that they're mentioning, Tukwila, Des Moines, SeaTac, where the airport is, all of these locations are a white center. All of these locations are south of Seattle. So generally speaking, there are more non-white people the further south you get away from Seattle. 2. Though the officers on the scene had felt very uneasy, there wasn't enough evidence that a sex crime had been committed. With no crime, no charges, there would be no official action by the police. I suspect the response of the race soldiers would have been quite a bit different if it was a black woman with a white boy. Facts. Book 1, daughter. 1. To put it bluntly, to be free in right and natural law does not mean we are free to break the 10 Commandments, to lie, to covet, to steal, to dishonor father and mother, to commit adultery. John Schmitz, in his 1974 book, Stranger in the Arena, who determines what is right and natural, the religion of racism, white supremacy. Facts. Chapter 1. Lemon Heights, the Beverly Hills of Orange County, 2023 census. 50.6% white, 28.2% Asian, 10.9% Hispanic, and 2.9% black. 2. John was dark, nod to Dr. Welsing 2 times. 3. John Schmitz and Mary Sewer had met at a college graduation party at Marquette University in Milwaukee. John was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Given the information from Gus's programs of the last month, I take this as a bad sign. I'd have to say facts on that, too. 3, they were part of the white flight from Milwaukee, too. Like, get the hell out of here. All these niggers and Lou Alcindor. We got to go. 3, no one wanted to talk about it. Years later, Mary Schmitz had an injury that made it impossible to care for her new baby daughter for several weeks. Mary Kay's blonde hair was but a faint, downy glow. Will we learn any more about this supposed injury? Was it perhaps postpartum depression? Can't have a Cow's book club without a reference to blonde hair, for sure. 4. John Schmitz, he was a card-carrying member of the right-wing John Birch Society, the anti-communist organization founded in 1958 to promote conservative causes. No mention of his history of using racist slurs when talking about blacks, according to Wikipedia. Maybe it's more accurate to say he was a card-carrying racist white supremacist. Interesting text on the John Birch Society, A Conspiratorial Life, Robert Welch, the John Birch Society, and the Revolution of American Conservatism. Chapter 2. Half the summer was gone before the new house at 10 Mission Bay Drive in Corona Del Mar would be Southern California, complete with a swimming pool. A home swimming pool is such a symbol of white supremacy. Their increased popularity may coincide with black people attempting to go to public pools during the 1950s. Seems very dangerous, what with drownings. They reportedly carry with them a lot of maintenance, increased insurance costs, and may even decrease the value of the home. Go figure. That is true in terms of the maintenance, upkeep, cleaning. I have been told that all of that is very costly to manage it, especially because water is so expensive now. 2. John Schmitz ran for president of the United States on the American Independent Party. As a California state senator, he sponsored a bill to end fair housing legislation in California. He successfully censored University of California, Berkeley for having Eldridge Cleaver as a speaker on campus. During the 1968 presidential election, he was quoted as saying, "George Wallace is too moderate for me." Dang. 3. He found little Philip, who was as blue as the water, tiny and lifeless. Yep, home pools are dangerous. OJ lost a child to drowning in a home swimming pool. 4. Tourists now Trump past the child's grave to pay their respects to Nicole Brown Simpson. Must get in an OJ reference. All this happened so close to OJ, it's kind of mandatory, right? 6. Mary Schmitz was stoic about the loss of her baby. It wasn't her style to make a scene, to toss her body on the casket, or even shed a tear, not in public anyway. This type of behavior may be a part of white culture. Chapter 3. Mary Schmitz, the enormous house, the furnishings on the main level were exquisite. Upstairs was another world, no matching furniture, no gorgeous crystal, and no exquisite figurines. No family photos, that's kind of, the children's bedrooms were sparse. There was so much mold and mildew in the bathroom that I couldn't even use it. The hypocrisy and superficiality of white supremacy. We are royalty and can't even bother to keep the bathroom clean. What does it mean to be white? Now, to be fair, getting the mold out of the bathroom, that is supposed to be Negro work. Like, that's why you have a nanny and a maid to go in there and get the scrub brush and mess their lungs up and everything, get all the spores in their lungs and get it all sparkling, and there you go. So, you're not supposed to, you don't have Mary Kay in there. I got to go and scrub. I'm supposed to be working with my curls, man. I got to be in the mirror. Let's see. 2. Michelle and Mary Kay shared a common experience that ensured a unique closeness. Both had been molested by a relative. Mary Kay would later describe Michelle's recollections as an exaggeration and dismiss the sexual abuse as nothing more than fondling. Were the other girls in the family molested too? Great question. 3. And that, were they Catholics too? 3. When John Schmitz became interested in learning more about his genealogical background, he made several trips to Europe. An excited Mary Kay told Michelle one time that through her father's research, he discovered that he was related to the Romanian royal family through an illegitimate son of one of the kings. White supremacy is a royal system, according to Neely Fuller Jr. 4. Mary Schmitz was not a demonstrative mother. The behavior of white mothers is a recurrent theme in the book club. Joyce Dahmer, Jen and Sarah Hart, Sue Klebo, my favorite. 5. Primping was one thing, but as they grew into adolescence, Michelle began to find it excessive. Parents, siblings, and peers fed into the development of her narcissism due to her blonde hair and supposed beauty. Chapter 4. In fact, Southern California was made for white girls who looked like Mary Kay and Michelle. Beautiful girls who could put on a pair of shorts over a swimsuit and slip into sandals and look like $1,000,000. The global system of racism, white supremacy is made for them. 2. Sometimes the pair got in the car and just headed south where they'd end up partying for the weekend in Mexico. What the heck? I could not imagine letting my child drive down to Mexico without my supervision. I will say, if you grow up in California, especially Southern California, it's so easy to go across the border into Mexico, even in Texas at certain spots. Like, it's so easy to go over. Like, how easy is it to go over? As someone who lived in California, and I didn't even live in Southern California, I just lived in Bay Area. But as someone who lived in California, how easy is it to go into Mexico? I have accidentally gone to Mexico, just being aimless in the vehicle and not paying attention. And whoops, wait a minute, we in Tijuana? We are in, facts. So if you live there, and because you can go clown in Tijuana and get, like, it's almost 4th of July, so you can get like cheap fireworks. Some people say they go there and get groceries. Some people just go there to clown for the evening. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're white, what is it, free, white, and 21? Like, it's really easy to just go into Mexico for the evening and clown. So yeah, I could see if you're white and you grew up in Orange County or San Diego or something like that, like, yeah, as opposed to, it probably gets boring to just go to the beach in California. Like, let's ride down to Tijuana and cut a fool. We can get some fireworks, get some alcohol, woo! Cut a fool, get some whores, woo! Yeah. Let's see. Chapter 5. Lawyer Gloria Allred, the peripatetic lawyer who is seen continually in the media. She has defended Arnold Schwarzenegger and R. Kelly. Not Aura. What? To a very uptight man, so self-righteous he believes in his ideas so virulently. To me, it's a virus. Horribly negative, homophobic, anti-union, anti-abortion. No mention of him being a racist. This the dude that's hanging out with the John Birchers and all that. Conservative, but come on. 3. John Smith knew it and some would later suggest it irritated him. He joked about her surname, All Red. Attack of the Bull Dykes. A sea of hard Jewish called Gloria Allred a slick butch lawyeress. Gloria Allred filed a $10 million libel suit, charges of anti-Semitism, demonstrations staged by members of the Jewish Defense League in front of the Schmitz home. Again, no mention of him being a racist. I suspect this is an act of deception on the author's part. I would agree. 4. German marching music from an open window. Heil Hitler. That's Mary Kay. She's going to defend her. I don't even know what that is. Like, you all are bad-mouthing my dad for his hypocrisy and all the rest of it. So I'm going to play German music? It doesn't even compute to me. Like, what? You need to be singing the Pledge of Allegiance, man, and getting off your high horse and all that. How about some sex education so you're not spreading sexually transmitted infections and all the rest of it? If you can be doing all that creeping, all the rest, that ain't R. Kelly, but if you can be doing all that creeping, make sure we practice safe sex. How about that? German mute. Get out of here. Much obliged. Let's see. Star 61, folks have commentary. untiljustice@gmail.com if you have further thoughts. Let's see. Lauren, retired firefighter in Florida, should be with us if you'll have commentary on the second portion of the audio.
May I have your ears?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I wanted to go back to chapter 3 right fast for my first comment. It said, I never ever, this was the friend, I think it was Michelle, talking about Mary Kay Letourneau and her mother. She said, I never ever in all those years saw her mother hug or kiss her or show her any type of affection in any way, ever. I never heard her say, I love you, nothing, Michelle said later. I just wanted to point that out. We were talking about the cold white mothers. I also said they were a facade family, said an adult friend of the family, a Hollywood set. Let me see, chapter 4 talked about Mary Kay and the partying. And the language, the book was insinuating, alluding to a high occurrence of sexual intercourse without actually saying it, party, have a good time. I got the idea that he was talking about sex and or getting inebriated. But then it said, it kind of said it. Like the paragraph after I thought that, it said there were some very traumatic things that happened in her high school and college years. The promiscuity is a classic symptom of somebody who has been molested. She was sexually used by men she dated too. She was physically hurt. I know that she was, as much as she keeps denying it by saying that it doesn't matter. I know it does. Let me see. Oh, so one of her brothers is getting married to a Scientologist, not a person who calls himself a Catholic. The mother says, if she's not going to the wedding, no one should. Mary Kay Letourneau decides she's going to the wedding. It said Mary Kay was the only one to break ranks. She loved her brother, and no matter what her mother said, she was going to be at the wedding in San Francisco. She and Michelle drove north in the Schmitz family's Oldsmobile. The engine blew in Bakersfield. The teenage girls had no money, nowhere to stay. Mary Kay called her father, and he said he'd drive up and trade cars in the morning. He still wouldn't go to the wedding. Mary Schmitz had laid down the law. The girls end up talking a trucker out of his truck for the night, and they curled up in the cab. Okay, that doesn't even sound true. I think it's more likely a trucker let them sleep in his truck, but why would he leave the truck? It sounds like one of those lies that someone tells, like she told her father that, and then, she just repeated it later, because it did not sound like the truth. And they were talking about the show that they did called Free for All with Mary Schmitz, Gloria Allred, and the president of the United Teachers of Los Angeles, Hank Springer. Said sometimes after the taping, Mary Schmitz would join the others for a drink or a meal at a Mexican restaurant. And, it said Hank thought of her as a fucking right-wing cunt. But then, he describes her as to the right of Attila of the Hun, and Hank Springer described as to the left of Jane Fonda, whatever that stuff means. But then he says, Mary Schmitz is elegant, she's very beautifully dressed, never a hair out of place. I think white people really confuse us with the I'm on the left, I'm on the right, I'm progressive, I'm conservative. They're all practicing racism, and we think they're arguing. Meanwhile, they're going to the Mexican restaurant afterwards, and we're confused. Let me see. I, too, noted that German music, it made me think of Columbine. Carla Stupple, another white woman who seemed not really to care about her children that much. The daughter said, I don't think my mother's capable of truly loving anyone. It is not in her nature. She's too selfish a person. I mean, this is the daughter saying that about the mother. And the mother, she says she swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills in a mock suicide attempt to keep John from leaving her. And she called the doctor right after she made the attempt. She wanted to keep John. She didn't intend to die. She seems super manipulative. Let me see. And she had the amniocentesis performed during her pregnancy. She did so to make sure she was having a boy, because if she had been having a girl, she would have aborted the baby. Whew. She's having this child to manipulate this white man. She doesn't really want to have the baby. And she said, John was not real thrilled that I put his name on the birth certificate, but I'm not going to lie, she told her daughter. Now, this lady has been lying the entire time. It's just so interesting, the things that people say. Carla Stuckles seems to be a person who lies. And I had a couple of things from the last session. When you were, you said Obama's mom, she might have been nurturing, but she wasn't raising a race soldier. I was talking about white people and their cold mothers. Talked about the Oedipus complex. The female version of that would be the Electra complex. Also, I checked. I don't know if this is correct. I wish you would check yours, because it said blonde was in the text 24 times, rape was in the text 29 times. I thought blonde would be in the book way more times than that. So I'm not sure if mine is accurate, and that's all I have for now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Much obliged, Lauren. I know Mary Kay couldn't have been out here playing no Rammstein. You can talk about my dad out here, and we'll put that Rammstein on now. Come on. Come on. That. Woo, man. I'm told that is same time period. So, I mean, yeah, she could have been playing Rammstein with our Columbine brothers. With KM FDM, maybe she played that up too. She retired firefighter in Florida. He had commentary on the second audio section.
No, I got tied up with something. I was just catching up, listening to the commentary, but I don't have anything.
Much obliged. We'll be back next week if you get caught up or get notes to share. Let's see, I'll get some of my notes from the second audio section, and we will wrap it up for this here week. Let's see, we start off chapter 4. They get right to it immediately. Mary Kay, Michelle Reinhardt, that's a German name too, right? They are hot girls, and they know it, boy, and they get all the attention and power of being white girls in California. I thought it was patriarchy. How did you get all this power and attention and control all these dudes and manipulate them? Like, come on now. Come on. Let's see. Southern California was made. For real, the author Gregg Olsen should have said Southern California was made for white girls who looked like Mary Kay and Michelle. Beautiful white girls who could put on the shorts and all that, because that is the truth of the matter. This is not made for nobody who, this is not made for nobody who looked like Michelle Obama. Get out of here. That's not what this is. Not at that time period, and not now, 2025. Let's see. Blonde hair comes in there again. Let's see. We knew we had power over men. We knew we were very aware of it, and we used it. Michelle recalled they're talking high school, so this is when they're teens. I thought it was a system of patriarchy. This is decades before we get to like Me Too and Ruth Bader Ginsburg being on the Supreme Court and Hillary Clinton out there breaking down the glass barriers and all of the equal pay and all of that. Like, hey man, the Lilly Ledbetter Act and all of this is decades before all that stuff. And what are you talking about power we got over men? What? Wait a minute, what? What does it mean to be a white woman? You can't have a system of white supremacy racism without white women and white men. Get out of here with all that sexism nonsense talk, man. Let's see. They just hop in the car and go to Mexico. That's what it means. I don't even need no passport, man. I'm white. I'm a white woman. Free, white, 21. I'm good, man. Let's go. Let's see. We had way, and they don't even be saying that lame P word, privilege. They keep saying power. We had way more power than we should have had. We basically did what we wanted to do. Our life was basically whatever we wanted it to be. We worked when we wanted to work. We worked where we wanted to work. We played where we wanted to play. That's how they go to Mexico. And we wanted to play. That's what it means to be white, free, white, and 21. Now, who lives like that? I work where I want to work. I work when I want to work. I play where. That's the whole world. I don't just play on my little block, my little corner, my county. My passport is stamped from all over the world. That's my playground. That's what it means to be white. I do whatever. And that even gets to the story that we on here. See, rules don't apply to me. What you mean I can't sleep with a 13-year-old? I do. Even really white defiance, because you get arrested and all this, and they say that you got to stay away from the 13-year-old. You don't tell me what to do. You don't tell me I can't sleep with a 13-year-old. I sleep with a 13-year-old if I want to. You don't tell me what to do. White defiance. The rules don't apply to me. And I had just said John Benet Ramsey in those pageants, all about, the power, white beauty. We want to make sure those characteristics that are associated with being classified as white, and really albinism, lack of melanin, the blonde hair, pale eyes, all of that. We want to worship and glorify those characteristics, the beauty con game. I had just said that, and Mary Kay was 17. Her mother pushed her into running for Miss Newport Beach, even though she wasn't old enough to enter. So they lie about the age there, too. Let's see. And then they got all that abuse and what have you in the pageant. And that's the same thing that they talked about with John Benet Ramsey. But that, another story, another state. Let's see. Getting into trouble and being able to weasel out of it, that is the system of white supremacy racism. If you're classified as white, you are not supposed to be punished. You are not supposed to be held accountable. Certainly not for practicing racism, but a lot of times it's not. Hey, how many of them January 6ers got pardoned? This had happened when President Trump was being inaugurated. She could have threw her name in the hat too. Like, hey man, Vili was about 18, man. He's basically a grown adult, man. Come on. Look out. Give me pardon too. Come on. Some of them were child rapists. Remember? We talked about that, the January 6ers. They say, and then they're going in chapter 4 and say, Mary Kay she never got the love that she really needed. That's why she was raping a 13-year-old child, all these decades later. Love, that's what this was about. Come on. Whole lot of people don't get love. I mean, we're in a system of white supremacy racism, so whole lot of people are deficient of love. They don't go around here raping children. Leroy don't get no whole lot of love either. Does he go around here raping 13-year-olds? Come on. We've done whole programs about the racism, white supremacy in Orange County. Let's see. Talk about that another time. I thought it was important too. They had all the demonstrations and such, and no accusations about this person being a racist. Really? I wonder, did Mary Kay get the same sort of blind devotion and support from her family during this rape trial, where they came out, but playing German music or what have you, and back up off Mary Kay. You back up off her. She's a beautiful blonde white woman, and she loved Vili. She was trying to do the correct thing by Vili. You back up off her. We'll see. Let's see, chapter 6. So we get into dad stepping out. Mary Kay's dad stepping out. And the hypocrisy, there's so much because you have a system that is primarily based on lying. And so you got this white man who's talking about self-discipline, and we don't need to talk about sex education in the school. And then he's doing all this sleeping around and illegitimate children and all the rest of it. And that's so random. Even all the sexual molestation, saying Mary Kay was molested by a family member and all of this. Come on, man. All of the lying. All of the lying. And how old is this guy? Oh, he's 18, officer. Lying and lying. Even what's the title of this book? If loving you, this ain't about no love. If it was love, you ain't got to lie. You ain't got to lie. You just, hey. This is love. I can come. We ain't got to be sneaking out here, creeping 1:30 in the morning. We come out here at 1:30 in the afternoon, broad daylight. Put it on YouTube and TikTok. This is love. This ain't got nothing to do with him being 12. Are you 13 yet? Well, whatever. It don't even matter. Aaliyah, the great, she already told us, age ain't got nothing to do with it. Love is love. We ain't got nothing. That's why we out here at 1:30 in the daytime. See, we ain't got nothing to be shamed about. This is about love. We doing everything that we doing is correct. His parents think it's love. Go down and get a pie, and you talk to Vili's mother. They got the most delicious pies in the world. Lovely. And she'll let you know. We are in love. That's what, okay, maybe, you know, they ain't trying to do that, but you out here at 1:30 in the morning, lying. Well, he's 18 years old, you know, we not doing nothing wrong. Yeah. Fuller say, that I keep just coming back, isn't this racism? Fuller say, number one method, primary method of maintaining white supremacy racism is lying. Lying. You got a whole lot of lying right here. A whole lot of lying right here. Love. Jesus Christ. Woo, Fuller said that too. Whole lots of atrocities go down. Love. You know, I love me some Vili. I love his whole family. I love them pie. They got the most delicious pie, did I tell you? I love me some pie. Whew, let's see. And then all this lying too. Carla sitting here lying. I'm going to commit suicide. She lying about just lying and all of the sexual incorrectness. None of this is sexual activity about we're going to do something correct. I'm going to treat this person in a correct manner and we're having contact that's going to be for their betterment, my betterment. That's nowhere in the book. None of it. All of the sexual activity, all of it seems very manipulative, deceptive, coercive, all of it. Destructive, all of it. Which is kind of what the system of white supremacy racism promotes. Let's see. Love isn't even the nature of the system. That's what she said. She said she's talking about her mom. She said her mom, Carla, she admired John Schmitz, respected him, was drawn to his power. I don't think my mother's capable of truly loving anyone. It's not in her nature. She's too selfish a person. That is really what the system of white supremacy encourages, produces. Now, you can think about a chicken and egg, but I mean, hey, that's what is promoted all the time. It is not about love, whatever that's supposed to mean at all. It is about, hey, you look out for self. Be greedy. Look out for you. All these other folks are lame. If you help anybody, that's mooching and all that. We don't do that. You look out for number one. Look out for you. Take care of you. And forget all that. Oh, that's goofy. Oh, that's goofy. That is what this is. And that's a lot of why you get all this with parenting. Because parenting, that is about the most selfless thing in the world. So how are you going to be a quality parent if you are about selfishness? And that's why you see a lot of, hey, we have to get a nanny, or, you know, I'm not doing, you know, I'm going to the club, man. I'm not doing all that, man. Take care of them. White people don't care about children, which is pretty much what we got right here. We will resume next week, Chapter 7, Gregg Olsen, If Loving You is Wrong. This would be another book. Now, how would this book differ if a non-white person had written it? How would this book differ if someone with an understanding of counter-racism had written it? What would they highlight? Something to think about. And again, is this racism? Like, do people talk about this as Mary Kay is a racist and out there raping non-white, and that's just another part of the racist school system in the U? Do people talk about it that way, or do they include? Or is this just, you know, tabloid incident? And man, Seattle is wacky, isn't it? Compensatory call in tomorrow. I cannot say enough. Don't be no Gus T, man. Embarrass yourself talking to Neely Fuller Jr. about Mary Kay Letourneau and be sending a, yeah, man, I'm going to have to check that out, man. That's crazy. Mary Kay, where this happened? Oh, wow. It happened, what? Wait a minute. It happened here? And shit. Oh, man. I'm going to go read about what happened a couple blocks from where I live. Yes, I'm going to go read about that. Man, don't be no Gus T, man. Research local events related to white supremacy racism in your area. And if you are ignorant, you can do what Gus T did. Hey, I'm ignorant. I'm still learning. And then you can go learn. You can do it as an individual research project, or you can make it a group attempted family effort. We'll all learn about Mary Kay Letourneau together. And then, hey, anybody got questions about why we're homeschooling you? Now, do you want to meet Mary Kay Letourneau's cousins, nephews, nieces? Any other questions about why you're homeschooled? Anybody else? Okay. Reading more important than watching television. So thankful. Katherine Massey Book Club is back. Gus T survived Milwaukee. Whew. Now we can get back to reading. Creator, we ask that you remind us, maximize our time and energy to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Remind us not to waste non-white people's time and energy, especially our own. Stop name-calling black people. Stop producing throwaway offspring to be raped by white women. Stop gossiping. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cows signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.